Greetings, Imagination Con. The Designing Hollywood podcast, brought to you by Martika Ibarra and the great, legendary Hollywood costume designer, Marilyn Vance. I am afforded the wonderful opportunity of co-hosting the show. If you are interested in the magic of Hollywood, the design of Hollywood, the clothes of Hollywood, watch the Designing Hollywood podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts from, or find the video version on the John Campea YouTube channel. That's right, the Designing Hollywood podcast. Why would you ever want to miss it? Especially if you love the movies.
There's a company called Hot Toys, and they make these insanely realistic, renderings of characters. They do them for all the Marvel characters or whatever, and they look so much like you. It's disturbing, actually. Like, scary. They look so much like you, but they're tiny. They're like 18 inches or something like that. They actually that's what's crazy about that company is they hand make they carve the mold of
That's crazy.
It's wild.
Robservations with Robert Meyer Burnett.
Well, greetings, Imagination Connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude. Call me what you want. It's up to you. Monumental douchebag, if that's what you want to say. Fine by me, but at least submit fan art for that. Because I would use that on the show. If that's what you want to do, if the fan art is good and really conveys your thoughts, bring it on. I'll put it on this show. Because why not? This is Midnight Musings, episode 63. We're 6 episodes away from Sonny Dominguez's favorite number, right? You know what I'm saying. You know her, you love her. She's my co-host, and she's here with me too. She's And how are you tonight?
Robert, I am doing great. It's so good to be here on Midnight Musings, Robert. So much is going on, and there's a lot to talk about.
There is a lot to talk about. Now, I have not seen Blue Beetle, and I just want to get it out of the way. Have you seen Blue Beetle?
I have.
And what are your thoughts?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, I consider Blue Beetle to be kind of like a coming of age story. You know, Zolo plays this young college grad, and he goes home, and things have changed for him when he goes home, and he meets this smoking hot lady in the story, and there's romance in it, and there are scenes like where he's in the bedroom with her and they're about to kiss, and then the uncle's like, hey, I hope I wasn't disturbing you guys, was I? You know those kind of cute little moments, but I mean, to be honest with you, I think that the strongest point of the film is how close and tight-knit this family is. They will stand up for each other and fight for each other. And that is really the strongest part of the film for me, Robert. I think there's no one actor that really dominates or stands out above another. It is very interesting to see the dynamic. But I also believe that the film may not be the strongest superhero film. However, it wins a lot of points when it comes to family for me.
Well, that's good. By the way, your sound it sounds like it's on the ocean.
Oh, it might be my fan.
There's a little of.
Is that better?
That is better. I was like hearing this little. It was. I didn't know what it was. I'm like, well, I haven't seen it. Here's the thing. And to be honest, I mean, it's not that I don't want to see it. I just find myself a little superheroed out, and these. Or by definition, the origin stories, you have a villain, you have a learning your powers. Why do you have this thing? And then you have to deal with what do your friends and family think, and then you have to take on the villain. and it goes from there. I mean, there's just elements that I've gotten a little tired of. Like, I kind of feel like whenever they introduce a new superhero, that I want to jump in and see their second movie. Because while the enjoyable family dynamic is there, and I know that there's a lot of people have talked about the kind of representation, which is important. But I'm like, I mean, I've been watching movies about different ethnic groups like my entire life, and it's like, okay, so now we have a Latino superhero. And I mean, it's like now every different ethnic group is going to get represented, and we're going to meet the family, and it's going to be just like you said. So if this is, I don't know if this is fair to the movie, because the movie could be great and people seem to like it. But for me personally, I'm just getting to the point where I already know. Let me ask you this. Was there anything in the movie that surprised you plot-wise? Was there a plot twist or a turn of the storyline that made you go, oh, that's interesting?
No, but there was something in the movie that I didn't care for. It's not the end of the world. However, I didn't care for their decision to do what they did. It didn't necessarily harm the film. I just didn't think that they should have done that to the main character. And, they kind of have a part where they resolve what's happened, but I thought it was unnecessary, almost cruel, to do that to him. However, Zolo looks amazing in this film. I don't think it matters whether it's going to be a success for him or not, because he looks amazing on camera. I watched him for so many years on Cobra Kai, and he just shines like a bright, shiny star, Robert. He's going to go very,
like
very,
Mark Wahlberg in Boogie Nights? You're a bright, shining star. A big star.
He's a little young in Cobra Kai, and I couldn't really look at him that way because he's kind of looked like he was in high school, but now he's he's a man.
You can look at him that way?
Well,
All right.
I'm just saying that there's some shots of him where he took my breath away, with his amazing looks. And I have to say that is always a pleasure to experience in a theater.
Oh, I'll bet it is. Yeah. No, I mean, in all seriousness, I think, yeah, it's just that I think the problem is in a lot of what's leading into sort of whether there's superhero fatigue or not, all of these origin stories can't help but you go in there and it's like, for moviegoers, we know exactly what we're going to get. Now, the basis of the powers, the blue scarab and all that, that's interesting, but we already know beat for beat how it's going to play out. And I feel like as a genre, I mean, I love genre movies, but I love cop thrillers. I love legal thrillers. I love all kind westerns, whatever, and all these tried and true genre formulas. It's how do they play with the formula that makes it interesting. And with the superhero formula, when you're introducing a new superhero, there's really nothing you can do to make the formula fresh. And I think that's kind of what's been the problem, especially with these DC movies. You had to introduce Black Adam. Same thing. Okay, here's Black Adam's origin, and then what makes him different is that he kills people, but he still has the origin story. And these origin stories are just it means the movie is immediately stuck in this kind of formula. But then on the other hand, you had The Flash, which I really liked. And everyone else, I really thought it was going to do far, far, far better than it did. I really missed the mark on that one. But I really enjoyed that movie, even though it was the first Flash solo out, and we already knew who he was. We didn't need to see his origin story. But I just wonder, is it even possible to introduce a new superhero? I almost think that it should be like the James Bond franchise. We should just introduce these characters in the middle, drop them into the middle of the action, and we learn about them as we go.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I thought, I liked Shazam! Fury of the Gods more than most people did. because you had Helen Mirren and you had Lucy Liu kicking ass or whatever, and you didn't. So I don't remember, it was Lucy Liu, right? I don't even remember. but I mean, we already knew the Shazam family and everybody was all there, but I just feel that even though that movie didn't do well either, but I don't know. I mean, is it possible? Like, I'd be interested in James Gunn's Superman movie, and he said he's not going to play. It's not going to be an origin story. We don't need to. It's like James Bond. We didn't even see his origin until Casino Royale. You meet him, you get that he's a secret agent, just like you don't have to see a cop go to, cop school. He doesn't have to go to the police academy before you watch. Like, you don't need to see Treat Williams go to the police academy in Prince of the City or Al Pacino go to the police academy in Serpico. They're cops. We already know they're cops. Cowboys and Indians, in Westerns, we already know that if you're a cowpoke or whatever, or you're on the Ponderosa, we know that already. And yet they constantly have to show us these origin stories, which it feels to me like, I mean, the X-Men, the first X-Men movie didn't bother with origin stories. We saw a little bit of Wolverine's backstory, but we didn't see the Weapon X program. He was already cage fighting, and I feel like we get it. We understand. But in this, of course, they have to show how Blue Beetle becomes Blue Beetle. And like you just said, wasn't that interesting.
It wasn't that interesting, and I have to say that I felt the look of the film was fantastic. It looks great. And certainly I don't know what the answer would be to make it fantastic, to make it that film where you walk away and it takes your breath away. I don't know how to solve it. I don't even know whether it's that important for this film. I think that they knew what it was when they put it out, and this is what they wanted to make, and they're satisfied with the outcome of it. So I don't even think that they set a certain benchmark. It didn't meet it. I think this is what they wanted from the film. But what is kind of interesting, he's supposed to be a college graduate. I hope I didn't say this already. And I feel like that the film should have been released at Memorial Day, when students are graduating, so they can kind of relate and pick up on this character, whether they're in high school or college. You're going to go and see that film. He just graduated. It's just like it's somewhat relatable. And I think they could have grabbed a much bigger crowd of people who might be interested in seeing it, opposed to releasing it the second or third week in August, when many students are back in school and they're not necessarily hopping off to the movies on the weekend. I think they kind of missed a huge opportunity with that release.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's meeting its projections of like $25 million. And this was another movie that was made originally for streaming. Then they decided to put more money into it and have it come out theatrically. So I would love to see it do well. I mean, I don't take any pleasure when movies don't make a lot of money. I mean, in the meantime, Oppenheimer is going to pass $700 million worldwide, which is going to outgross Interstellar, which is amazing. So good on our boy Chris Nolan. That's and Barbie is chugging right along. But no, I mean, I'm happy Blue Beetle came out, but I do think that the superhero genre, like, let me ask you this too, having not seen it, the villain. So Susan Sarandon's one of the bad guys. There's a bad.
Yes.
Is the villain more cartoony, or was the villain down to earth? Like, did the villain, like the movie's Blue Beetle, was the villain like, well, Blue Beetle, come and get me now? Or was it more like...
No, it wasn't like Red Skull kind of villain, if that's what you're referring to. She was just a bad sort of corporate woman.
Oh, okay.
And she's taken over someone's business and wants to manipulate it and manipulate the people in that region. And she's been doing it and getting away with it. And all of a sudden, I think maybe not Blue Beetle, but no one had stood up to this woman. And now the stepdaughter and Blue Beetle and his family have no choice but to do it because, she's put them in this position where they have to defend themselves. So I thought Susan Sarandon played the role well. As far as I'm concerned, I don't know how many villain roles she's ever played, but I liked her as the villain in this. However, you're not going to be shocked or anything by her villainous ways.
Well, I can understand that. I mean, I just feel that, people like this movie, and it's just a question of when we live in a world where Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse exists. I think that the superhero genre has moved beyond the origin story. But you know what? To further opine on this, let's bring in Lael Rockwell, the 1/6 scale man.
Hey, Lael.
Yo, how are
What's going on, dude? So we were just talking about Blue Beetle. I know you've seen it.
you? Yes.
Liked it.
Yes, I
But-
liked it a lot.
But now you liked it a lot. But let me ask you this: did it have anything? I know it's an origin story and all that. Was there anything in it for you that you thought was surprising, or was it sort of a by the numbers? Not that a by the numbers superhero story, origin story isn't bad, but was there anything that surprised you where you went, "Oh, that's interesting"? And does it need to have that?
Okay, I'll say this. I'll say this about the movie. If you're going into it looking for something that's unpredictable, this isn't the film you're looking for, because it is predictable. But the family dynamic is what ties this movie together. The family dynamic is what makes the movie what it is. It's a good movie, and I enjoyed it for what it is. And I enjoyed the simple fact that Zolo pulled off an incredible performance. I loved him as Blue Beetle. Definitely on point. To say that there was there anything that surprised me about it, though? It's hard to say, because I think it's hard. Well, put it this way. It's hard to say because it was a predictable storyline. It's something that we've seen before. If you're a fan of like such, films as The Guyver, if you're a fan of Iron Man 2, then this is going to be a movie that you're going to gravitate to, and it's going to be like, oh yeah. But and especially, I will say that special effects is everything. It is better than The Flash to me. It is. It's better than The Flash. And to me, I think it's better than, Black Adam. And I enjoyed it, and I loved it, and I can't wait to see what's going to happen going forward. But yeah, I don't know. It's kind of hard to say if anything kind of stood out. I was like, that was surprising. Like, okay, no, it wasn't. I mean, put it this way: it was good for them to go this route. You know what I mean? Of giving us this version of the Blue Beetle rather than Ted Kord, because then you have to explain it. And I think this was the best way to do it. But yeah, I can't really say if it was anything that kind of like surprised me. I can't say that though.
Lael,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Lael, did you feel that the movie that we saw was exactly what they wanted to put out? Because I felt that way. I felt that this is what they wanted to present to us, and they did it, and it was successful in that regard, and that's why it was enjoyable to watch, essentially.
Yeah, it was definitely enjoyable, and I think it was the movie that they wanted to show. And I think that when you see it, there were certain aspects of the film that you can see why they originally might have thought of putting it on HBO Max. But then there were aspects of the film where you can understand that, okay, cinematically it would be better. So I see both. And I guess it makes sense for what they were trying to accomplish. And clearly this guy like Zolo, I mean, aside from just Cobra Kai, he's a star. Like, he's a bona fide star. So I love the simple fact that they're going this route with him, and hopefully we see more, fleshed out stories, and how he's going to play that role going forward is going to be interesting. But yeah, it was. I agree, though. It was the story that they were trying to tell. You can tell it was what they wanted to put out.
Okay, but I think that, so from that perspective, for you guys, the movie succeeded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not gonna criticize the movie because it's playing into the superhero origin formula, because there's only so many ways you can go. But if the movie delivered on what it was trying, to me, if a movie delivers on what it set out to do, it's a success. And it sounds like, and from everybody that I've talked to that really liked it, that didn't prejudge it for whatever reason, that whole, I'm beginning to really sort of, our fellow YouTube ecosystem, there's a lot of people that are no longer giving movies a fair shake.
Yeah.
Like, and they won't, which is beginning to really bother me. Like, I don't ever go after other YouTubers, and I like everybody, but I do find that some people's takes are becoming more and more disingenuous.
It's becoming it's becoming more cliche to hate on things and not give it a chance, because you're basing your viewing experience off of previous experiences, thinking that everything is going to go down that line, and you're not viewing it. Like, I go into the cinematic experience with a brand new set of eyes each time I go into
me
a film.
too.
Because that's the way
100%.
if you're going into it with the expectation for that film to fail, just because you may not like previous iterations or different films, or you may think that the studio is just bullshit, or however you basically, if you're going into it with that perception already in mind, if you're going into it that way, then it is setting it up. And again, it's going to always be that. And again, like we've talked about this plenty of times, that within this space that we exist in, where there's content creators and other social media pundits, they tend to like piggyback off of each other, if it makes sense.
Yeah.
And I see that a lot. I see that mainly a lot. There's certain people that I watch that really give honest opinions, and I watch them for their honest opinions. And they give things a fair shake. They really, really do. But some people don't. One, mainly, you and I both know. I'm just putting it out there. I'm not going to say any names, but you and I both know. And I've kind of scaled back from really watching his content, because it's nothing but negativity constantly. Or not constantly, but it tends to go down that negative,
See, I mean, I don't even mind negativity as long as it's constructive negativity.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, sometimes if it's not constructive, I can understand negative. If it's negative, if you had a negative experience, I would like to know why. But if it's non-constructive, and if it's just the rant, and just because people know you for doing that, then I kind of check out, bro. I really do.
Like, I got to tell you, I don't know if you saw this, but do you guys know who Mahler is?
Yes.
Okay. Mahler dropped one of his epic videos today about Quantum Mania and the state of the MCU. And he hasn't, I find his analysis, it's like a 3-hour long video. His analysis I find very cogent. I really like what because he really delves into the nitty gritty of all of it. I mean, sometimes he can get a little, I don't know, but I think that his videos are incredible. There's so much work put into his videos. Whether if he's your cup of tea or not, I just really appreciate his analysis and what he puts into it, and I find his videos to be very, very valuable. And he really went after Phase 4 of Marvel, and but clearly he has an affection for Phases 1, 2, and 3, as we all do. And I mean, if you're going to spend 3 hours on making a video about what works and what doesn't work in Quantum Mania, I think there's worse ways to spend your Saturday morning.
It's a almost 6-hour video. Right?
I watched 3 hours of it, and
wow.
It's insane. But what's interesting to me is, and I know he streams with a lot of people that I'm friends with and stuff, and people get mad at me for stream. I mean, I'm friends with everybody.
I don't know who he is. I literally don't know who he is.
Oh, he's done some real. Oh, he writes these videos. He'll pick something and it'll be an unbridled rage. is what he
Okay.
calls, and he's gone after the Star Wars sequel trilogy and stuff. But I watched it and I'm like, that kind of stuff I really appreciate because there's so much thought into it. Like I was accused this week. There's a Star Wars video that Jack Reed, this great editor, did of me. He took some of my Robservations and combined them into this Star Trek rant video that he cut together. Really good. I thought it was really good, but there was somebody that really slammed me hard for the video.
Why?
And,
Why?
because look, I'm very negative about modern Star Trek.
Oh, okay.
You know, and I understand, and maybe I've gone a little too far, you know, about it. But I did try and do a video where I really tried to lay out why I feel the way I feel about modern Star Trek by going back and saying where my fandom from all this came from, and it is true. I find it really interesting that I just want great storytelling. That's all I'm looking for. And for me, if I'm going to watch, like, I love watching stories that are deeply rooted in different ethnic groups. Like when I saw Mean Streets for the first time. You know, I love watching stories about New York Italian Americans because growing up in Seattle, I had nothing like that. And like we didn't have a large, I mean, there's a black community in Seattle, but Seattle's very, it's very, we're not real, all the different communities are not very different. So growing up, that's why I loved New York blaxploitation movies because there was nothing like that in Seattle. And maybe we had an Asian community, and I always thought Asian girls were hot, so I watched Chinese martial arts movies or whatever. But you know, so I love movies about ethnic groups, and the more ethnic a movie is, the more I enjoy watching it. So the idea that Blue Beetle is set in the Hispanic community, that is a selling point for me. Yeah. So, and when I hear that there's, I love, I mean, I used to love as a kid watching sitcoms about different families. Like I loved Sanford and Son and the Jeffersons, and just because I didn't know those people. So I felt like I was seeing, I know it was a TV show, but I was seeing a world that I didn't see. And that to me was interesting. You know, so I love all of that. Give me more of that. But it has to be germane to the story that's being told. I can't stand stories where they just force something in because it seems disingenuous. Like, and I think that a lot of our fan community, it's hard for them to differentiate, but there's a lot of that going on where I think people are pandering to the audience by sticking things in that aren't necessarily part of the plot. A lot, whether it's everything from race issues to identity politics to all this stuff where I'm like, people are overcompensating, you know, for where we are. Whereas because I grew up with lots of great, like if I keep thinking about Do the Right Thing. When Do the Right Thing came out, when I first saw it, I was knocked out by that movie. And I've often wondered, what would people say about that movie if it came out today? Because to me, it's one of the great American films that deals with race relations, and it's got that one moment where everybody's insulting each other. You know, the camera's pushing in, and I thought that was really raw and interesting. But now, would people scream, "Oh, that movie's so woke" or whatever? But no, this movie's over 30 years old, and it's as relevant now as it was back then. But that's an American masterpiece. You know, I mean, it was Spike Lee's third feature after She's Gotta Have It in School Days. And I you know, that movie was a knockout, but would it get criticized today?
Yeah,
For
we
the-
get
Probably,
criticized today, sure, because I literally just did a watch party tonight on Lorena Cruz channel with Dante James of Film Threat of Do the Right Thing. We watched it tonight, a few hours before this actual
Really?
stream. Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yes, really. And of course we commented on the film, and I talked about how you know, it was interesting that I've always felt that Spike Lee, it is true he wants to make money off of his films, but because he had passion for the films that he was making, I don't believe that his primary goal was to go ahead and be remembered for films that necessarily made $1 billion. It's not important to him. What's important to him is for films that he's making that are memorable and have a lasting impact for years to come. And as if I were a writer or director, that's what I'd want to be remembered for. But certainly he has done that. His films have been preserved in National Registry for films that are culturally significant. He is the darling of Cannes. I think they appreciate him there more than anywhere else because he does have films where he's passionate about what he's, creating, and that stands out. And also the notion that he tends to preserve specific moments in time in a way that I think
Historical moments, yeah.
is so important because those years of knowing what New York City was like, it's gone. He's in Do the Right Thing. He's using a payphone to call Rosie Perez, the mother of his child, telling her, "Yeah, I might be over," and she finally has to order a pizza just to get him over there. I think it's a very kind of funny situation. There was so much personal interaction in the film that it would be confusing to many people now because they would be texting this stuff. And if they found something that they didn't like during the text, we have a tattletale society where people will say, well, you got to see this text. We got to let everybody know this text that somebody sent me. If you did something like that back then, people would just kind of brush it off and say, grow up, you need to really be an adult. That's not the type of behavior. And I think maybe some of what's happening now could be addressed and part of Do the Right Thing, a modern version of Do the Right Thing. But certainly, I think that film would be criticized. No one would understand it. There isn't as much personal contact. There's a part where his sister is sleeping, and I think he takes his finger and puts it on her nose so she can't breathe. I mean, right now, what would happen? He'd text her, I texted you and you didn't get my message. Even so much as to go up to your sibling and bother them while they're sleeping. I just think it captures so much of what it was like to have those interactions. And you can't have those comments or even the passion of what it escalates to without actually physically being around somebody. You have to have a job at a pizzeria. You have to be there. There has to be some presence day in and day out in order for that to happen. The entire neighborhood was involved in Do the Right Thing.
Yeah.
So while it started off as just the pizzeria, it became even more than that. You have Giancarlo Esposito playing an incredible role in the film as someone who once is demanding that there be a picture of a black man up in the pizzeria. It really is spectacular in the sense of wanting to be part of this pizzeria. It's like essentially what he's saying from what I'm looking at it. And of course, the patrons are black. It's a black neighborhood, but he wants to be part of it. He wants his culture to become part of this pizzeria. And it is very interesting to look at what happens, the dynamic of it all, and looking at the generations. You're dealing with a man who owns the pizzeria who's substantially older than many of the people going in and buying food in there. And certainly the generational relationships. No one called him a boomer. No one said anything derogatory about his age there. He's an older person. And
they all love his food.
Yes, and even now, depending upon your ages, you have to be categorized by either gen this, gen that, boomer, whatever it is. And when you think about it, that's very, counterproductive.
No, I really think that that our civilization is totally devolved because there isn't that personal interaction anymore. It's even as kids. When we were kids and we'd leave as a free range child, if I went out on a Saturday and met my friends on my bike and my parents said, come back when it gets dark or whatever. When you were a kid, you learned how to politic with your friends. It's like, okay, what are we going to do today? Mm-hmm. And, if there was 3 or 4 of you, you had to decide, and no one wanted to sit around and not do anything for an hour. So you sat around and you learned how to parlay and you learned how to talk about it. And you go, let's do this. No, I don't want to do this. Let's do this. Okay, well, maybe. And then you'd figure it out and go do it. Mm-hmm. And because you were in front of each other and you learned how to speak to one another and you learned how to, I think that's been totally lost. And people get triggered by texts because they don't know they can't hear the emotional.
They can't hear the emotions behind it, man.
No, and now it's a really good point. So I'm just curious. So in a movie like Blue Beetle, when they talk about the representation, to me, the authenticity of the neighborhood and Do the Right Thing, the authenticity was dripping off the frame, even though the frame Ernest Dickerson's framing was so stylized, and that movie was so beautifully shot. But it felt, you felt the heat of the summer, you know, and you felt like everybody felt authentic. And when you'd see like groups of people, like when Mookie would go talk to Rosie Perez and they were alone together, the mood of the film changed, and suddenly you're with two people that have a kid together and they have this relationship. And whenever you saw different people get together, Spike was able to change the mood up from scene to scene. And it was really, really, I mean, he's a world-class filmmaker, and he can go do a movie like Inside Man, which is a great genre heist movie that also is a very New York movie, or The 25th Hour with Ed Norton. You know, and he's done a lot of crazy movies like Girl 6, and he has an incredible filmography. Incredible.
Black Klansman was amazing.
Black Klansman was amazing.
And he's also shown that he can make films that are more Hollywood style, where he made the film with about the four girls in, I think it was in a church, and then there was a bombing that killed these four girls, you know, I guess in the 1960s is when it took place. And I thought that was very interesting. He's capable of making films that Hollywood would expect directors to make.
So
and directors have made films like that.
So Mike, here's the thing about Blue Beetle that I would ask, that I'm curious about, having not seen it. So in the comics, I mean, they went with the iteration of Blue Beetle that was Hispanic, and I understand that. I mean, I'm a Ted Kord guy, especially in Justice League, because Blue Beetle was a Charleston character when they acquired the Charleston characters along with Captain Atom and stuff. That's when Blue Beetle was incorporated. And in the mid-'80s, when Keith Giffen and J.M. DeMatteis and Kevin Maguire were doing Justice League, the humorous Justice League, I loved Ted Kord. And then if you watch like Identity Crisis and all that stuff and everything that goes on there. But so here's the thing. Was the Blue Beetle, was the Hispanic family stuff, did it feel authentic?
Yeah.
It did feel. So it wasn't like comic book. Was it like Miss Marvel? Because I felt that was rather authentic.
It was very much like Miss Marvel.
It was definitely like Miss Marvel. It was definitely like Miss Marvel because, I mean, it was very and true to authentic to the culture itself, from, you know, just the conversations around the dinner table, the music that was playing in the background, the commercials that they basically that they shown, just that, even the neighborhood, just the environment, everything was pretty much authentic. It wasn't, forced down, your throat. I mean, Jaime Reyes, of course, we know this is the interpretation that they've gone off of. And it was really true to the nature of that. Like, really, it made, put it this way, like, there was no race swapping with this. You didn't have to worry about it because it was an interpretation in the books true to it. It's just putting book form to, the silver screen, you know what I mean? And, live action, seeing how that interpretation would be. And I think it was extremely authentic between the conversations, even some of the political aspect of it, which wasn't really politically driven, but they did touch on, representation and how they were treated and how they have been treated. And some of the dialogue made references to that, but it wasn't forced down your throat. They were extremely careful at making sure. Whoop, Rob dropped out. They were extremely careful.
No, I just put you front and center, buddy.
Oh, they were extremely at make sure that they were focused on Blue Beetle, the story behind it, making sure that you knew everything that you needed to know about the Scarab, everything that you know about his power set. They even, again, touched on Ted Kord. You got a chance, without telling too much, you got a chance to basically see the background, really understand that story, that side of it. But it wasn't, with this film, nothing was forced down your throat. It wasn't. It was extremely authentic, and that's what I loved about it. I think they did a great job.
Or did you feel the same way?
I don't know if it was 100% authentic, because I don't know whether all the cultural references made sense in the context they were told. I don't know if, the jokes made sense, depending upon which Latino group you were referring to, because there are so many. So I'm not sure. And I don't know if it might be an amalgamation of different experiences. So I can't say for certain that it's 100% authentic or not. And that's fine. Like, I don't know. I really don't know. I can't confirm it. I'm not an expert, and I can't say, well, that shouldn't be there because that's, from that culture, or that one shouldn't be there because it's from that culture. So I can't confirm that. What I can say is that it's extremely similar to Miss Marvel in the sense of the family being the most important thing in this story. Even more important, honestly, than the main character becoming a superhero. They just want to protect each other and go on and live their life. And I think it's very interesting in that sense that became more important than what was going on, honestly, as the Blue Beetle concept.
Right.
It wasn't anything where he was like, this, I have to be this Blue Beetle, and this is, something that's deep inside of me, and I can't survive if I'm not Blue Beetle. No, nothing like that. It was more of, I have to right a wrong, and I'm going to correct this. And it's that almost felt like a secondary element in this story. The setting of the movie was beautiful wherever they filmed this. It was very attractive. It looked like they were on some sort of tropical paradise. I assumed, I'm not even quite sure what city this was supposed to be, but it looked amazing. And one other thing that was very interesting is, and I said it a little bit earlier, they made a decision to do something that I wasn't happy with. I felt that was unnecessary and didn't necessarily do anything for the story, but they wanted to do that. And, the character, I guess, had to experience this. But I felt because of the lightness of this story that it didn't need to go there necessarily. And that person, let's say there's one person who they decided to remove from the film in a sense. I didn't think it needed that, but this is supposed to be a fun, light. I feel that the feeling of the film is very light. This is not supposed to be a heavy weighted situation. It's not the end of the whole world is going to end or anything like that. You're supposed to go in there and just kind of enjoy this, have fun with it, and enjoy that family that really love and care about one another. And if you can kind of look at it from that point of view and hope that Zolo ends up with the girl that he loves, you're gonna enjoy it and have fun in the film. So that's how I was interpreting it.
So then a big thumbs up from you guys, thumbs up from the both of you.
Yeah, I could give it a thumbs up.
I really liked it. I mean, look, it wasn't, I'm not going to say it was a completely perfect film. No, it wasn't. But it was a good step in the right direction for the character and where they're going to go with it. And the thing is, like I said, I mean, what would have made it like over the top for me if it was completely unpredictable as far as the storyline? If they would have took a totally, like a slightly a different turn. But I enjoyed the story for what it was. I mean, they told the story that they wanted to. It's just that I didn't want to know, or put it this way, I didn't want to figure out what the post credit would be.
Was there a post credit scene?
Yeah, 2.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, there's 2. But I didn't want to figure it out, and
Right.
I did. I didn't want to figure out what direction they would go with the characters. I mean, again, but again, not saying that it was bad, because it is thumbs up for me. I loved it. It was just predictable. You can't really take away from that, but predictable in a good way, because it did center around a family dynamic. It did center around, just Jaime Reyes, the character himself, coming to his own. I think the action sequences were incredible, bro. Like, I think they were dope. I loved it. But yeah, man, I think it was definitely a good step in the right direction and worth seeing for anybody, man. And the representation is there, and we need to see more films like this, and we need to support these films. If you want to see more films like this, you need to go out and support these films, because if you don't support it, then there's no step in the right direction. You're not going to see change. You're not going to see that level of representation on screen if it's not supported. And I think all cinema right now, like, put it this way, bro, like when they talk about fatigue, is it superhero fatigue? We've always talked about that. No, if it's a great story, people just tired of poorly written stories, and they want really, really good stories written. They want to get back to just, look, it's not even an act of getting back to the old way or the old MCU or the old DC. No, it's just writing good stories to get back the feeling of enjoying these films on the silver screen, and just really embracing the characters, following the characters. I mean, the character build up, the dynamics, the story, basically giving you the intensity that you want, the emotional, roller coaster that you're on, the action, everything poured into one, and it is a great story. You know what I mean? That's all we want.
And
So,
another, I think I want to add to that. Another way to also look at this film is that the Blue Beetle character may not be ready for a heavier story right now. You know, he emotionally he may not be there yet, and that's fine too. Let him grow up a little bit. Let him have some normal experiences before he has to be, let's say, take on the full mantle of it and have those major experiences. He may not be ready for that. He just came home from college and he's celebrating, and let him have this enjoyable time with his family now, and then let's say in a few years where he now is more mature and can get a different perspective in things and what he may want to do with the rest of his life, he can determine that, and then maybe you can have a more mature film, or a film that has somewhat more gravity to it in a sense. So it's a good introduction, as you said, Lael, to the character in that sense.
Well, that's good. I'll probably go see it tomorrow. Scott Bartholomew says, Rob, you like Blue Beetle. It's not perfect, but it's faithful to the comic, and the DEI aspect didn't seem forced. Scott goes on to say, I'd argue that Spider-Man, the 1962 Spider-Man, is Marvel's version of Blue Beetle, who was introduced in 1939 as, back again, like the Charlton characters were. Different, though. Wildebeest says, Rob, you should watch Blue Beetle. As a Chinese American, I liked it more than Shang-Chi, Shazam 2, or Guardians of the Galaxy 3. Maybe I'd feel differently if I was Hispanic, but it had a lot of heart, which is great.
It did have a lot of heart, man. And you can tell that the family really had a strong connection with each other. There were funny, humorous parts, but placed. I mean, put it this way: like there were parts that really stuck the landing. There were parts that maybe didn't, but you cannot say that family dynamic wasn't like authentic, and you weren't in it for the family. You were rooting for the family at the end of the day, and that's what I loved about it, bro. I loved, beyond just the simple fact that it was representation, it was heart, a lot of heart.
Scott
and that's what you wanted.
Yeah, Scott Bartholomew says most origin stories consist of fractured families, but Blue Beetle actually incorporated his family into the movie's main characters, which is great. And 5 Toast says that Blue Beetle was easily one of the best DC films of the last 5 years. It's a subversive sci-fi movie in the way the original Godzilla was. The home invasion in the middle of the film is a stand-in for ICE deportations. Is that what
you know
meant?
what? It wasn't. You know what? The nice part about this, bro, is that it had, despite everything that was going on in it, it did have that bright, happy type of feel that you would want. You would want to feel the adventure, and it had that level of adventure, and it felt good. I just say it was like a feel good type of film. So I was definitely excited about it, bro. And it did remind me of Miss Marvel. It did in so many different ways. It did.
And Scott Bartholomew goes on to say that refreshing that Blue Beetle was devoid of world building and multiverse tropes.
Yes.
Yes,
I agree. I agree. It stood in its own lane. It didn't make any references to any other characters in the DCU. There was no tie-ins. There was no none of that. It was its own separate film, and that's what I loved about it. Definitely.
Well, speaking of culture, Lael, there's something I've been wanting to hear about your experience of last week, about what you did, kind of ties in. But before we get to that, I just want to remind everyone once again that we are really lucky in this day and age to be living in a time where physical media has made sure that some of our most important films are, being revived and remastered, and the people that might have missed them the first time are going to be able to come see them the way they're meant to be seen. And this particular movie, of course, especially in light of where you were last week, is one of those films. And I'm, of course, speaking about Cool as Ice, Vanilla Ice, the ultimate edition of Cool as Ice. And, last week, Lael went to Brooklyn for the 50th anniversary of hip hop. And, look at these 4 different German special editions, the 2-disc digibook, the 2-disc media book, the 2-disc padded media book, and then there's the 12-inch 4-disc edition that I know that everybody who was in Brooklyn last weekend must be clamoring for this. So I just figured that once again, to celebrate the 50th anniversary of hip-hop, one of the high water marks of the art form, Cool as Ice, if there wasn't cultural appropriation, this movie would have invented it. And, just thought I'd once again, because I know how much Lael loves it when we talk about the Cool of Ice. No, in all seriousness, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this is the NPR has been celebrating the 50th anniversary of hip hop. They've been doing a pretty good series. But Lael, you went to Brooklyn last week with your lovely lady, dressing to the nines, but dressing, comfortably. You guys look great representing. You look like you had a great time. LaToya, she looked amazing. So tell us about last weekend. Tell us where you went. What did you do? How did it happen?
So we went to Brooklyn. We got up early Saturday morning. We actually went down. We wanted to go down on Friday evening, but we didn't. Friday evening, of course, if Louis Labitz is in there, shout out to Louis Labitz, he can tell you that they basically had the 50th, hip hop's 50th anniversary basically at the Yankee Stadium. So there was a couple of performances there. Lauryn Hill was there. Nas was there. It was a whole host of individuals that were actually there for the 50th anniversary. Brooklyn, definitely had their own, celebration, from block parties to, we also went, and here's the thing, like, we made it our effort to go to the Brooklyn Museum because they had the Book of Hove. Jay-Z, pretty much they had like a whole, pretty much a whole, you might as well say, like, not even just a documentary.
What is the Book of Hove?
Well, the Book of Hove, definitely, it's what it is. It is in chronological order. It just takes you from the history of Jay-Z's inception in hip hop, to where he is right now. All albums, just his influences in Brooklyn, certain things that he's actually done for Brooklyn, his connections to the world, different individuals, some of the landmark historical things that he's actually done, thus far. It takes you through that. The museum, it was at the Brooklyn Museum. It was an incredible, like, seriously, an incredible experience. We, got a chance to go, and we took a whole bunch of pictures, videos, and stuff like that. You heard, everyone from Barack Obama to, Coldplay, to so many individuals that were speaking and talking about, like, just being graced by his presence, what he's done actually for hip hop. It was an amazing experience at that Brooklyn Museum, to the point where I was just like, I want to go back. I cannot wait to go back and seeing Brooklyn, like, this way, as from way I remember it, just even the rivalry from Queens, our basketball team versus Brooklyn's team. We actually went to Gates and Grants. I was showing Toya, like, the old high school and where we used to actually go. And just like the rivalry, but in a good way. It was such an amazing experience. But I think the most that I took, and then also before I continue, we went to the so we went to the library, but then we also went to the Brooklyn Museum, and they had the African American fashion display. I mean, not the African American, it was African fashion, at the the Brooklyn Museum. So we went all through that. It was simply amazing experience. But back on the as far as hip hop, just seeing in some of the things that I didn't even realize, the influences from, basically the Bronx to Brooklyn to Queens, even Staten Island, so many different influences, people who you were like, wow. I mean, I remember these moments, but I'm like, wow, like, we are really here. You know what I mean? Like, it's come this fall, the full, the rotation of where it began to where it is now. Like, it is a global $1 billion franchise. I mean, where we are right now as far as hip hop, no matter what you may think about yesteryear's hip hop compared to now, not a lot of people are like, you know what, now the hip hop is not as influential as it used to be. But I think it's what I love about it is the evolution. It's evolving and it's going to keep on evolving. Hip hop is here to stay. It's not moving. It has influences all over the world. Everybody is influenced by it. Um, to the very core, from the way you dress, the way you speak, just certain things, and its influences on music and stuff like that. It was an amazing, and to be a part of it, to see some of the historians, to see some of the DJs, the old MCs, like even places that they show where people used to break dance and stuff like that, some of the old cardboard graffiti and some of like just everything that they had. It was incredible. It was such an experience, man. Like here's to another 50 years of hip hop. Like that's what I definitely want to say. Another 50 years. If I'm 100, I'm going back to Brooklyn in my old age with my old knees to celebrate. So I definitely loved it, man. I loved everything
You
about it.
talked about how people are interpreting even, let's say, the newer versions of hip hop, and I think what's really interesting is how Kendrick Lamar won a Pulitzer Prize for his album, which is something I didn't think we would ever see anybody win
Right.
for a hip hop album. And also Childish Gambino, who you all know,
Yeah.
who is in Star Wars as well. I think that his videos and music also are incredibly reflective of our modern social issues, but not in a condescending way, more of an artistic way. And I just, for example, This Is America. I remember the first time I saw that video and heard that song, and it was just so blatantly truthful about what our society is going through, and perhaps not things that are ideal for our society that can be sustained in a way
Yeah.
that's not ideal. And so I think that, truthfully looking at that, and it even so plainly stated it's important. I think Kendrick Lamar really focuses on having pride in yourself. And
Yeah.
I think that's a beautiful message. And certainly it
Yeah.
doesn't matter what he's even saying in the song. I think it's an important message. Having pride in ourselves as human beings, that we're all important and we're living on this planet. I think there was one song where he talked about be humble, and one thing that stood out to me was how he had said he just wants to see an ass with a pair of stretch marks. And what he's really saying is enough with these filters, enough with these
Yeah.
Snapchat things. I just want
Right.
to see a human being. I just want to see a
Yeah.
person.
Yeah.
That was very interesting because the desire of having this authenticity. We talked about a sense of authenticity. Hip hop has always been in its core authentic. When the first person, you had the turntables playing a beat, and someone had to get up there and have this creation about what you were going to say and what it was going to mean. So, regardless of the inserts and whatever might have been put into it, the core
Yeah.
of it is having pride in what you were trying to express as an artist. And so
Yeah.
I think that that's an element that has never left hip hop, but it also makes it relatable to anyone. Anyone can go ahead and grab a microphone and express themselves in a hip hop manner.
Mhm.
But certainly we are seeing a beautiful age when someone wins a Pulitzer Prize for a hip hop album, which I think is one of the best ones
Yeah.
ever made. He also is conscious of health as well. And I know this doesn't really matter, but it matters to me. Recently they did a poll, and they asked different hip hop artists about what they consider in their health to be important. And a tremendous amount of them said that we consider, taking care of yourself and making sure that you're healthy, going to doctors and protecting yourself. And you wouldn't
Mhm.
know that from talking to them just in a normal environment, but they did a research study here in the United States about it. And so there is also the notion of that as being an important aspect of maintaining yourself, making sure you're okay. I
Yeah.
think that that is an incredibly positive message coming
Yeah.
out of modern hip hop artists today.
Well,
Yeah.
I
And I
think
think
really. Oh, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say a lot of what they're pushing now, just over the years, just through certain experiences, um, you know, uh, a lot even goes back to like even what Bismarcky and his family like is experiencing right now, like what they're going through,
Yeah.
where even his music and distribution of his music, the family is still fighting for it because It's, there was a lot going on at that time, and but mental health is a huge thing right now, and they are basically pushing that. But the biggest thing that I've seen within the last couple of weeks, and they were talking about it, they were like the resurgence of people who actually go back and are willing now to study the history of hip hop, where it wasn't that over influx. Now people have the urgency to do it. They've seen an increase on album sales from back in the day. People hearing songs now, like, yo, I remember that, going back and basically even buying physical prints, trying to find physical copies, or even downloading certain things. They saw an increase on that, and they still show the relevance of hip hop. Basically during the late 70s, 80s, 90s, where people basically in the early 2000s, where hip hop was alive and people were really interested in the content. Like, it was basically the dialogue, substance in music, the storylines, not everything was, sexually driven, but just storytelling and stuff like that. Like, the relevance now, like even after like the concerts that were basically thrown, they were showing an uprising and just the element and true essence of hip hop. And I think, like people have been said, even though, like I said, there's evolution, I think that the heart nowadays, the heart of hip hop, and the appreciation for what came before is missing. And that's why you hear, even when you hear the current music and the way it is right now, it's, I can't really say that it's paying homage to it. And look, you don't have to. They can live in the moment, their own moment. They're creating their own lane, but also pay homage and give respect to people who came before, who paved those ways for you, that allowed you to walk in that space and earn the money that you're earning now. You know what I mean? Because it's really important. And everything in hip hop has a place, but I'm so glad to see that everybody's going back and really, really, really diving back and discovering the history and knowing the history and the artists and everybody who came before.
Well, what's really I think what's really cool now is hip hop has had so many eras, and beginning in the '70s and up till now, it's the same way that people talk about the '80s or the '90s or the different eras of rap and the different people that dominated the form, and I think it's really kind of cool, because even I go back and I think about '80s hip hop, which was. I guess there was social commentary, but it was really more about having fun,
Yeah.
and that's why I like LL Cool J, Walking with the Panther was such a, I love, Brenda's got a big old butt,
Oh
and
yeah.
I need love, and
Yeah.
I was a huge LL Cool J fan, but I think if I were to say that now, I don't know if people would think that was like, if I say I like Eric B and Rakim, people are like,
Yeah.
okay, or if I like Wu-Tang Clan or somebody. But you talk about even Too Short, who went to USC. I loved the Boogie Boys. I loved all that '80s, and that's a very different kind of hip hop than, Kendrick. You talk about Kendrick Lamar winning a Pulitzer. That's very different now. But I love, what I really love. I love that rap has now gone international, and people are
Yeah.
rapping in every language,
Hmm. Hmm.
which they didn't have that before.
Hmm.
And, if you think about the height of culture, I guess that would mean that Blackpink's Lalisa from Thailand, she's a Thai rapper in my favorite Korean girl band, and she raps. And if that's where hip hop, no, I'm just kidding, but sort of. But no, I think it's great, and I love the fact that it's rap is sort of
Rap
like
confessions.
jazz.
Hmm.
Obviously it comes all the way from Africa, but the idea of rap is really kind of an American form that has been exported to the world, and the world has embraced it.
Hmm.
You hear
Definitely.
people rapping in every language now,
Yeah.
which is really great. And if you travel around the world, you hear hip hop everywhere,
Oh, it's everywhere, bro. It's so
everywhere.
influential. You hear it in everything, everywhere and in everything. And it's not even basically what you hear, it's what you see. You know what I mean? It's the, cultural, it's the cultural influence on the way people dress now. Just the dialogue, just when you're talking to different people, like when you hear it, you know it. You know what I mean? You know that it's been influenced by, hip hop. And the thing is, it's like not it. This hasn't had it. This isn't the way it has always been, because people have had to fight hard for this space. You know what I mean? To really exist, for hip hop to have a space, to have an existence, to be respected, as its own thing. You know what I mean? And even like, corporations and companies that have tried to dumb down hip hop to kind of phase it out. They've tried to blend it with different genres to try to phase it out. And we're just like, nah, that's not gonna happen. That's not gonna happen. So that's the importance of it. And again, there's not the appreciation is, people are starting to really take notice, but I think they need to really just kind of appreciate it more for what it is. A lot of these young cats, need to really understand what it was like and where they are right now and who made that space for them. And I don't think they do it too much. You got your Kendrick Lamars, you got your J. Cole's, you have so many other individuals out there, that do have a level of respect, for what came before. But I think that needs to be spread out a bit more, man. There's so much in hip hop that should be appreciated, and hopefully we see that, man.
Well, also, I mean, the form has been elevated so much. I mean, when Kendrick Lamar does what Kendrick Lamar is doing,
Yeah.
it I think it makes it harder for younger rappers or to break in. That it's more about the lifestyle and the swagger and the social media cred than it is for the actual art form. I mean, maybe you hear these tragic stories about how these young rappers are losing their lives, and you don't hear about their music. And it's unfortunate because rap as a musical form has really and a form for social change has really grown up and matured over the last 50 years.
Yeah.
Which is I think very cool. Darth Plato said, this is random. Darth Plato says, "Hey Rob, have you seen Greyhound yet? The movie is badass. That's the Tom Hanks World War II movie." Yes, I have seen Greyhound, as a matter of fact, and I liked it. I didn't love it, but I would say yes, it is badass. But I liked it.
Yeah, I did a watch party. Darth Plato and I watch historical films, as you know, on Thursdays from 6 to 8 p.m. on Positive Fandom. And we watched Greyhound this week. The week before, we watched Operation Mincemeat, both
Right.
amazing films. And I would encourage everybody to watch them. They're amazing. There's going to be a second follow-up movie to Greyhound. I don't know when it's coming out, but a sequel to it is in the works. And it's just great to see the films that they're coming out with now. Historically, it's really a great time right now.
They're also doing a third. They did Band of Brothers and the Pacific. Now they're doing the Air War, the big miniseries about the Air War in World War II that Tom Hanks and Spielberg are producing.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that.
Great. It really is.
Joshua Gonzalez watched Brian De Palma's Dress to Kill. Bobby was a great villain. Only Brian De Palma can have us believe our heroes are a kid and a prostitute. Fantastic. Well, Dress to Kill is a Stone classic, I think, and it's a great film. And De Palma's now, I'm sure it's problematic because, of course, the villain is a cross-dresser, and people would object to the portrayal. But hey, it was effective. I snuck into that movie when I was a kid, and I got you got to love that in the beginning of that movie, Angie Dickinson's naked and she has sex, and then she dies, and she gets murdered. And I love that when I was a kid, let me just tell you. And it was awesome. No, I love Dress to Kill. And it's got a great Pino Donaggio score. It's beautifully filmed. It's awesome. Our friend Thomas Logan says, James Gunn's credibility is dead. The lies just keep piling up and blowing up in his face. The studio should forbid him from speaking in public or fire him. Well, I don't know. Has James Gunn, has he claimed anything other than they're rebooting the DC universe? I mean, there's things that come out like Gal talked about Wonder Woman.
Bro.
I mean, but Warner Brothers never released a statement saying they're making a Wonder Woman movie. They didn't come out and say they're doing Wonder Woman 3. And
here's my thing. Here's my thing about that, bro. And I talked about this on Comic Book Talk with friends on Monday, and this is what I that interview that she did was months ago, like, right? So it was months ago that she did it, and they just, I guess they just
published
a few weeks ago published it, right? Now, because she has a contract still with Warner Brothers, right? Right now, from what we know, she still basically has a contract with Warner Brothers. So, wouldn't you think that if it was a situation where there was a certain level of uncertainty within the company and with James Gunn and Peter Safran, that if before they publish this, they would have to get permission from Warner Brothers and them to publish it, correct? Because they're talking about the franchise. It's being referenced to. Wouldn't you think that they would say, well, nah, we got to pull the plug on that segment, maybe edit that out because we don't want that out there because it's uncertain. Because when you do that, and then we're getting these, well, here's again, Peter Gunn. That's
James a different
Gunn,
thing. Yeah.
Exactly. James Gunn hasn't said anything, right? He still hasn't said anything, correct? If I'm right.
Yeah, no, see, the thing is, all this stuff gets conflated. If it's not an official release from the studio, or it's not an official interview with James Gunn, because James Gunn was on, he did an interview with somebody, a long form interview. I think, was he on Michael Rosenbaum's podcast? I'm not sure.
That was a few weeks, about a month ago or something like that.
Yeah. And I don't think, because, everyone talks about, like, James Gunn isn't lying. Like, he doesn't have to lie. I think the funny thing about all of this stuff is, like, James Gunn had nothing to do with the direction of DC's slate before he took over the DC universe with Peter Safran. Mm-hmm. And all of this stuff, Blue Beetle, Batgirl, The Flash, Aquaman 2, all of this stuff was all in the works. And by the way, Peter Safran's the producer of Aquaman 2, like he produced the first one. Mm-hmm. All this stuff was in the works before they took over. Mm-hmm. So anything that's happened up till now, they really had nothing to do with. And I mean, James Gunn might have wanted, and Safran and DC might have wanted them to change. Like, there's all these different endings of The Flash that they shot, which we know. We know they've eliminated. I mean, basically what it comes right down to it is the DC universe is being rebooted from scratch. And if they want to have Reyes come in and be part of that, if they want to have they're saying that Blue Beetle is going to be part of that universe, although I don't know about that with the amount of money that the movie made. I don't necessarily think that I wouldn't bet on that happening. They're starting from square one. And they might have certain things like Peacemaker, and who knows how that's all going to work. But the idea is the DC universe is starting over.
And I guess my thing is, bro, like, if there has to be some type of control, publicist or somebody. Like, I don't think, and in my opinion, I just don't think he should talk as much, bro.
I don't either. Really, I mean, he's always been a child of social media. He's always been.
Yeah, bro. I think he shouldn't talk as much. And the thing is, don't. You know what? I live in a space, and we live in a spaces. Don't tell us what you're gonna do. Just do it. Just do it. If you just do it, don't talk so much, and you don't have to go back and course correct or go back and always rebuttal what someone is saying or always, want to defend yourself. But my point is, this whole thing between and the thing is, I don't think Gal Gadot's lying by any stretch. No, I believe she had a conversation with both Peter Safran and James Gunn. I believe they talked to her about developing a Wonder Woman 3. I believe that. And all she said was, yes, they talked about developing a Wonder Woman 3. They didn't say when, She didn't say when. She just said they talked about developing a Wonder Woman 3. So for the people to say that, no, that's not going to happen. That's what. And when I start seeing this in a full rotation, I'm like, well, nobody else is. Where are you getting this information from? Well, insider who? It's always, this is the shit that always gets me, bro. Everybody says the same. Well, it's an insider who's very, credible, and they know. How do you know, man? Like Peter Safran and James Gunn haven't said a fucking word. They haven't said nothing.
That's the look. The funny thing is being involved in the entertainment business, and it's hard to understand that the things that we're interested in, because we're only interested in superheroes, science fiction, horror, whatever genre stuff. There's a lot more going on in the entertainment business than just that. And so Peter Safran and James Gunn are thinking about, okay, they have an incredible amount of pressure being put on them. And like, one, they have to put out Aquaman 2, and Aquaman 2 is a sequel to $1 billion grossing movie. And word on the street is the movie's had problems. It hasn't apparently tested well. I don't know. I mean, and
which one is it?
Aquaman 2.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah.
Right, but I mean, I really like the first Aquaman, and they've gone back and they're trying to make it good. The thing about Aquaman 2 is it's a lame duck movie. It could be the greatest movie in the world, but whatever happened, Aquaman 2 is the end of what I call, I mean, Snyder Bros don't like it when I say this, but Iron Man 2 is still, Jason Momoa was cast by Zack Snyder. So in my mind, the Snyderverse is extended a lot. I mean, I know everybody wants to see the conclusion of his Justice League movie. I'm really excited to see the trailer for Rebel Moon drops this coming week. And I'm like, I don't understand why everybody, there is not going to be a Snyderverse ever again. It's done. It's over. And James Gunn and Peter Safran are starting from scratch. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I think that James Gunn is going to make an incredible Superman movie. I think he's going to bring a sensibility to it. I think he's going to go back and make it classical and make it whimsical and make it more like Donner's Superman, but also like classic. Though there's going to be a little of George Reeves' Superman from the 50s. He's going to go back to all those classic elements because he does know how to do that. It's just he hasn't done it yet. But if you watch his movies collectively, he has the power to do it. But they have an incredible amount of pressure on them because they're expected to start an entirely new universe. And that movie is going to be Superman. And it's like, if they fuck up, I mean, that's literally going to kill. If that Superman movie's bad and it doesn't make $1 billion, and it does have to make $1 billion, it can't make $500 million. It's got to come out of the gate, and it has to be a banger. The DC universe, as we know it, there's not going to be any more comic book movies, not for a while.
Yeah,
it's a big. I mean, already, look at what's happened with Black Adam, Shazam, The Flash, and now Blue Beetle, which is a movie that was still expensive, but it's going to open at $25 million or something. Maybe globally, who knows where it'll wind up. But the last superhero movies at Warner Brothers, none of them have done great. And if Aquaman 2 tanks, if Aquaman 2 even makes $400 million, it's going to be considered a monstrous disappointment. Following up $1 billion movie, the same way I look at the trailer for Marvels and I think Captain Marvel was $1 billion movie. It made $1 billion fucking dollars. And I look at that trailer and I'm like, that's not $1 billion movie. You can look at the trailer and go, that movie will be lucky to make $200 million.
Bro, I honestly, this thing in this space that we live in right now for a comic book film, there's only been a few films that have made $1 billion within the last couple of years. Like literally. There's only been a few films that have made $1 billion within the last few years, bro. Like I don't think just because it's a comic book film or whatever. Here's the thing. Yes, Captain Marvel made $1 billion its first run out. I don't think it's going to make $1 billion this run.
You can look at that trailer. There's not enough in the trailer to make me go,
No, and they need to drop another trailer to really kind of ramp it up because I don't. What people are seeing here's the thing, bro. Like I'm really pushing for Tiana and Miss Marvel herself
Miss
to
Filani.
Miss Filani, Tatiana and Tiana. What I forget her last name. Tiana. I keep forgetting her last name. She's
yeah.
Miss Marvel. I mean, she's playing Photon.
Yeah.
But I want their first run out. I want it to be successful for both of them. But the amount of hate and criticism that this film is going to get, just because people don't like Brie Larson, is going to haunt this film, and that's the bad part about it, bro. Because of that, and it's sad. It's really, really, really sad. People. What Black Panther made $1 billion, didn't make it the second film. Came close, but it didn't make it the second film. There's been so many films that haven't actually made it. I think it's just. Again, people are hesitant because of the stories. And like you said, that Captain Marvel trailer, I don't know, bro. I don't have the same excitement, the level. I'm going to see it. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm going to see it, but I just don't have the same excitement. I don't have that excitement. But to be fair, I didn't have the same excitement for Guardians of the Galaxy 3. I'm just being honest. I didn't. I went to see it, but I just didn't have the same excitement of going to see it because it just, with everything that's going on right now, it's just like, but I went and saw it and I enjoyed it. Even with the Blue Beetle, I just went it because I just wanted to support the films. But the excitement level, everybody who's been, I think they bit off more than they can chew, bro, with this whole multiversal thing. They did. They weren't ready for it.
They not only were they not ready for it, they didn't. One film has not moved into the next film. They haven't. Winter Soldier informed the further Captain America movies. Age of Ultron informed Civil War.
Yeah.
They really did a good job of building on those films, which they have not done in Phase 4 or 5 so far.
Nope.
And I don't think, to be honest, there's been all these things. They do all these big Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 has made almost exactly the same amount of money. It's about 18 million short of making the same amount of money that Volume 2 made. And for a sequel, that's really good. So the between the two of them, the Guardians franchise is one of Marvel's most as far as 3 movies in terms of a trilogy. You had 750 million, 868 and 843 or something like that, or something along those lines. That's a really strong trilogy of movies. Any studio would be very happy with. You're deep into 2.5 billion for 3 movies. Now, that's for Guardians of the Galaxy. That's really respectable. And by the way, all of those written and directed by James Gunn. So, and people, they look at first of all, I love The Suicide Squad. I loved the Suicide Squad movie. And the fact that it didn't make money really was completely the AT&T iteration of Warner Brothers. But like you said, all anybody wants is great stories well told. And to me, I'm perplexed when it comes to Marvel, how they squandered the Infinity Saga and how they took all that, because we were all up for it, and they didn't go back to and start building and then have one movie lead into another. They're all totally unrelated.
Yeah.
And which is an odd thing. I mean, I want to see, because I love the Infinity Saga. But it's weird to me how they're, and I think all the other superhero movies that have come out, I just think people are tired, unless a superhero movie, and I believe this of anything, any story has to have an intellectual hook for you to want to watch it. Yeah. Just having a superhero is not enough of an intellectual hook anymore. Yeah. You have to have something more. There has to be something more, and Shang-Chi was an origin story, so you had to deal with. The Eternals was kind of an origin story, so you had to deal with that. Blade will probably be another origin story because we have to figure out why are there supernatural where'd vampires come from? You know, Dormammu and all that. Now the two things that broke this week are Doctor Strange 3 is going to lead right into Kang Dynasty, now they're saying. And then also I heard today that Thor and Hercules. You know, they're going to go.
You know what I heard today? That I hate to be the person to say this. I'm sorry. And I know the internet is going to hate me. They're going to hate me for saying this, bro. They are really going to hate me for saying this.
Wait, let's go full frame before you say
I'm
this.
prepared. I am really prepared. I'm prepared for you.
Wait,
guys
do you want me to prevent that? Just we can do this. We can talk about this. I'm just saying.
No.
Okay.
But the rumor was that Taika Waititi is being considered again.
Oh yeah.
To make this film. And I'm telling you now, if this is true, I will not go see it at all.
Oh, I probably won't.
I won't. Because I don't trust him. I don't trust that he's going to be able to scale back. Even with some of the comments that Chris Hemsworth himself has said, and that he wants more serious tones. You know, he wants this to matter. Even with that basically being said, I don't trust Taika Waititi. So and look, I would trust him with any other film outside of Marvel. But I will not trust his vision anymore when it comes to a Marvel film.
No, I
will check out. I'm sorry, people can hate me if they want. You can send me, but I just will not go see it.
I think you're right. I mean, you know, Thor Ragnarok made $855 million. Love and Thunder made $750. I mean, there was almost $100 million difference between the two films. I know people love Taika Waititi, but I think that Thor: Love and Thunder, to bring him back and do what they did, they need to bring. You know, they need to bring back is Kenneth Branagh, who directed the first Thor. And bring him back. You know, he did the Cinderella live action film for Disney. He's doing the Hercule Poirot films. He's got A Haunting in Venice coming out, and he made Death on the Nile, and he made Murder on the Orient Express. So he's been making movies. Bring him back. If you're bringing in Hercules, bring back some Shakespearean mythology, and bring that in. I think that's what they need to do. But I mean, I think you're right about that. By the way, our friend King Tannic, the man who brings you the otaku experience every week, he says, "How's it going?" Basically,
Hi.
Good to see you, sir. His latest episode of Otaku Experience went up yesterday. It was good, and although it got demonetized.
What?
Yeah, his episode got demonetized. It got the copyright. It wasn't a copyright strike. It got a copyright notice from. Netflix is monetizing his latest show because he put a trailer for One Piece in it.
Oh.
Yeah, you can't do that. It's okay. But it's funny because Netflix has a documentary airing about Amber Heard and Johnny Depp.
Yes.
And they used a lot of YouTubers. They took a lot of YouTube commentators and put them in that documentary. And then they go back and they demonetize YouTube shows that put their trailers in there. I mean, did they pay for the footage? Did they pay for that YouTuber footage? Because if they didn't, that's not fair use. You know, you're taking copywritten material and you're monetizing it. It's the same kind of thing. I mean, even though it's a documentary.
I had no idea that they used YouTube footage in that documentary.
Yep. And yet they'll go back and ding poor King Tannic on his show, you know, demonetized. Dicks. Our friend RRTNZ says Chuck Norris visited the moon before the astronauts in 1969, and that's why they found no life there. Chuck doesn't do push-ups. He pushes the world down. Well, it's true. And RRTNZ goes on to say, "Hail, Bob. I re-watched some TNG yesterday, Next Generation, The High Ground, Darmok, and The Wounded. All three great episodes. Nice to revisit Trek as both great sci-fi and human drama. Yeah, it's amazing when you go back and you watch an episode like The Wounded, which is that's the introduction of the Cardassians, and you're like, where's this show? Can't they do that? We have a tip coming from Tack and says it's interesting how big the domino effect is when a Disney movie bombs compared to other studios, because it means they can't integrate it into their theme parks and crossover merchandise. I saw hella Coco stuff at Disneyland, but no Good Dinosaur, for example. Oh, it's true, and a lot of people forget that Disney's, their movies are all merchandise throughout their parks, and they have a long life. I mean, Cars, people don't think about the Cars franchise was incredibly lucrative because the toys made a fuck ton of money, and people forget about that.
Yeah.
Scott Bartholomew says, I already said that Blue Beetle was devoid of world building and multiverse tropes. Hunter Becknell says, hi, Rob, have you been watching Foundation? I really like the mesh between science and religion. I didn't read the books, but I like it. I did read the books, and Foundation's kind of skewing further and further away from what the books are. I think it's handsomely mounted, but again, it's kind of gone off the rails in terms of writing, which kind of bums me out. Do you guys watch Foundation at all?
I watched
No, I
season
didn't.
1 and season 2 is up, but I haven't watched season 2 yet.
Did you like season 1?
I didn't care for it. I felt that it was quite a distance away from the source material, you know. So even though I love Lee Pace, I felt that he shined in the series. It lost a lot of its appeal when they started to kind of experiment with a lot of the characters.
I agree. It's just they went in a weird direction with the whole thing. Tom Jr. Jackson says, Robin Lael, great to see you. And can we talk about how stunning is looking tonight? Great show. Another Saturday night special.
Thank you. Ooh, Saturday night special. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Tom. We are all goof people. What a kind man you are, and thank you for everything that you do.
Yeah. Scott Bartholomew says, did filming for upcoming TV seasons finish before the strike began? No, a lot of them didn't. They pulled the plug. Some, because TV seasons are sort of staggered now, so I don't know where things are. Some things are done, some things aren't. It's going to be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
Glenn Mark says, evening, friends. Your book adaptation, Rob, can you tell us a little bit how you went about acquiring the rights? Well, I have 2 novels that I've adapted. You have to go to the agent. You have to find either the agent or the lawyer who represents the author, and you approach them and you say, I would like to option your book, and then you have to make that person an offer, and the option's usually for 12 or 18 months, and then you what an option is you say for the sake of argument, say you offer somebody $1,000 to option their book. That means no one can do anything with that book for at least 12 months or 18 months, or maybe it's 6 months, and then you have that much time to try and set that project up somewhere, and then when you exercise the option, whatever you have negotiated that's going to go into that option, then you have to pay the difference. So you might have $1,000 option on a book, but to buy the book, to exercise the option, might cost $500,000. So that's how that works. Scott Bartholomew says, you need to review The Prisoner with Patrick McGowan. Oh, I did. As Heel versus Babyface and I did an 18-episode review. We did 18 YouTube streams reviewing each episode of The Prisoner. And you can find half of them on my YouTube channel. And then the other half are on Az's because we switched channels. So you can definitely check. I love doing that series. I thought that was a great series. Joe Panora says, I just got on. Are we talking about Peter Gunn and Lord Tariq or Tariq?
No,
Yeah,
not Peter Gunn and Lord Tariq. Nah. Even though that's my guys. No, 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 not at all. Not at all. Not at all.
This is interesting. Samuel Shin says Captain Marvel 2 could have hit $1 billion if it was Secret Invasion co-starring other Avengers. Secret Invasion should have been that or an Avengers event film. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't as good as I had hoped because I read the scripts. I mean, but it is kind of going right into, you've got Sam Jackson. It is kind of a follow-up to Secret Invasion. Sort of. Like, I guess.
You know what? What I was thinking, and I was, we were talking about this on Monday, and I was like, you know what? Like, you're basically introducing two series, like two books, two actual comics and storylines at one time, when you could have basically would have been even smarter for them to even focus, since before they even introduced the multiverse, that they actually introduced the scrolls. So it would have been even decent if they would have just stuck with Secret Invasions as a storyline going throughout.
Right.
That would have made more sense. And
they could have added, that would have been an extra added layer.
Yeah, and then jump into the multiverse later. Because you started with the scrolls, which made sense if if thousands of them have been here and they've replaced so many individuals, it would have been smarter to go down that lane. You know what I mean? And then through that, you can start introducing, bro, that would have been the perfect way to even introduce the Fantastic Four, to be quite honest.
I know.
It would have been the perfect way to do it, because then you're talking about these, specific species that's replaced everyone that we know. So even the Fantastic Four that we would have been introduced to weren't the real ones. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So it would have been good to go down that lane and then introduce the multiverse later, instead of doing two things at once and just half-assing one because you're focused on one that hasn't been successful.
Well, I mean, it just the threat of there's 1 million alien refugees on Earth that have infiltrated every level of our government and society and who knows where else.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a monstrously huge threat, and they kind of deal with it in a montage in the last episode of Secret Invasion. And it was done so haphazardly and half-assed ultimately, and you're like, the ramifications to this are huge. And here's another thing. How long until the human population just melts down? Between Celestials coming out of the ocean, between Thanos snapping half our population out of existence, between finding out there's 1 million alien infiltrators, that David Icke has been right about lizard people this whole time, infiltrating us, that the British royal family is lizard people. Well, yeah, I guess apparently some of them are. And it's like they do. Phase 1, 2, and 3 felt like it all hung together. You didn't ask questions about, like, well, if this is true, what would people be doing now? Because one thing led to another. Now every Marvel movie, it goes off in these different directions. Like, how does Quantum Mania affect everything? Okay, we've seen the Council of Kangs.
Yeah.
But then what? The Kang Dynasty. I mean, and a lot of them were kind of goofy. Like, what are all these people going to do? And now we've got Loki coming out and dealing with more. I feel like the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe is spinning off into oblivion. It's like a top on the floor that's spun out of control. Yeah. It's bizarre.
Yeah, it's again, bro, like, I think there's just too many things going on at once. And you make a great point. I mean, with everything that we're dealing with when it comes to the Eternals and the Celestials, the Skrulls, the multiverse, the snap, like, damn, like, it's like, if I was a totally different alien race and I see, like, y'all, it's already crowded, it's already packed here, why do I want to be here? It's enough trouble. Like, all resources seem to be, just completely drained from this planet because of everything, and everybody's always wanting to come here. You know what I mean? And you think that you have more advanced technology elsewhere and you want to come here. I don't know. I mean, it's just the way. I don't know, bro. Like I'm with you. I don't know where they can go and how they can clean up this mess that's happening in the MCU right now. Even though I enjoy it and I love the MC, I love Marvel, I love DC, but they're making it a lot harder than what it should be, bro. Literally.
Oh, I totally agree. I mean, I don't understand where, like, it's, to me, it's so messy.
Yeah.
Again, who's in the Avengers?
Exactly.
We don't know.
We have no
Like,
idea.
we have no idea. We have had
None.
since the end of Endgame. Is there an Avengers team? I mean, they mentioned the Avengers. The Eternals mentioned the Avengers. I mean, Doctor Strange said, "I'll get you back on the lunchbox in Multiverse of Madness." What lunchbox? And it's such a weird thing to me that the Avengers, their biggest grossing team, that we don't know. We haven't even glimpsed the Avengers in all of Phase 4 and now Phase 5.
Exactly.
We don't know anything about what's going on, and how you're leading up to Avengers Kang Dynasty and Avengers Secret Wars, like with who?
With what?
With what Avengers?
Yeah.
I mean, now we're gonna have Captain America, New World Order, but what's going on there? Like, what are you gonna deal with? Like, take your pick. Are you going to deal with the Celestials? Are you going to deal with the Armor Wars? Are you going to, what are you going to deal with? Are you going to deal with Wakanda in the wake of T'Challa's passing? What's going on there? I don't know.
And bro, like I'm tired of the same excuse or it's the same wording. Well, there were clues. We left y'all clues. Just follow the breadcrumbs. Where the fuck's the clue?
No, they don't know. Yeah.
There's no clues. I don't see anything. Where was there a clue? Or did you, or are you just writing it in there, or just viewing these films yourself and say, okay, we're going to say this was a clue or that was a clue. We'll just stick to that. Like, there's no clues, Kevin.
Undead Six says, yes, Lael, people are hesitant, but guess what? They did this to themselves. I wrote a letter to Rob that he read about my feelings toward the current state of the MCU. Yeah, that was a good letter too, by the way. And that they have done it to themselves. I mean, let me ask you this, to both of you. Do you think that there is a way that the MCU can make you care about the MCU again? And if so, what would that take? Because the stuff that's coming out, to me, Loki is Loki's the worst offender of all of them. It's spun the MCU going to the end of time, and he who walks among the rows or should not be named or whatever. That show completely, to me, Loki broke the MCU with the Time Variance Authority and made it all goofy and Terry Gilliam-like. I'm like, compare something like that to Civil War and Avengers Age of Ultron. I mean, Avengers Age of Ultron was even though that movie, by the way, has gotten much better over the years than because it with what went on with Ultron and Vision and everything that happened, and it played off what had come before, and it's just like now I don't even know what I'm supposed to care about. I have a million questions about the MCU and none of them are getting answered. There's just more questions piled on top of more questions, and I find none of it satisfying. And I don't think they could go back. Like, even if New World Order, and I have high hopes for that, even if New World Order is a Winter Soldier level film, how are they going to deal with all these lingering questions about everything that's happened in the MCU?
Yeah.
And if they introduce Blade, how do you bring in a massive supernatural presence into the MCU as we know it now? I mean, it wouldn't. We've seen Agatha Harkness and all that, but none of the sorcery and seeing the werewolf by night and all that. Where's the vampires? Is there a vampire world order? Like in the Marvel comics, Dracula is a real dude. The X-Men fought him, in an annual. So it's just so weird to me.
I just think that they've, again, too many properties, man. Too many properties all at once, and without a solid plan. But I think also I don't want to. I think I just blame it on rushing to get something done, to get something out there just for the sake of, because they felt as though, okay, everybody's riding this wagon and they're riding this train, and they're going to ride with us to the bitter end because that's the expectation. um but there was no solid plan at all. The only thing that I can tell 'em- actually, honestly, I can only tell them to take a few years off to reformat. It's the only thing I can say. I don't know. I don't. The thing is, bro, there's no legitimate answer as to what they can do or will do. There really isn't. Like, it's just a wait and see type of situation and hope for the best of what they've been promising us. You know what I mean?
It's crazy.
And I guess basically also it's up to us to lower our expectations, lower them down a little bit. I guess
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah, it's a weird place to be.
Mm-hmm.
Just to shift direction, hip hop happens. Says peace to Cool Herc, the Jamaican roots, but hip hop
yes.
is an intrinsic human behavior. This is interesting. From Shakespeare to the '50s Beat Generation to Dr. Seuss, you can't tell me that Sun Ra and Gil Scott Heron aren't hip hop. I definitely think Gil Scott Heron is.
Gil Scott Heron is all hip hop. Gil Scott Heron's his contributions to hip hop in general, just not even from his poetry, but beyond his poetry, but just just his stance in general is all hip hop. All hip hop. Nothing but hip hop.
Gil Scott Heron, even though I'm a big proponent of the space program and I love technology, Gil Scott Heron has one of my favorite things. A rat done bit my sister Nell with Whitey on the moon. Her face and arms began to swell, and Whitey's on the moon. I can't pay no doctor bill, but Whitey's on the moon. 10 years from now, I'll be paying still while Whitey's on the moon. I mean, it goes on and on and on.
Yeah.
And I know as a white dude, I probably shouldn't, but you can't be a space program proponent and not think of the same things that Gil Scott Heron was singing
Is saying
or thinking about when he
exactly,
said
bro.
that. And, it's a great song.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is, bro. Definitely.
It's so good.
Hell yeah, it is.
It's so good. I love Gil Scott Heron.
Hell yeah, bro. Hell yeah.
Whitey's on the moon. So good.
On the moon, bro.
Hip Hop Happens actually asks a really good question. Top 10 or 20 pre-TOS science fiction films. And he offers Forbidden Planet, Gojira, Day the Earth Stood Still, Fantastic Voyage. I guess that is pre. Is that pre-TOS? Could be a cool primer for a 60s headspace. Well, there's other, I would say Metropolis from 1927, you got to put up there. And there are probably a few others, but there's not many great science fiction films pre-TOS, because I think the era of great, Them, even though it's a giant ant movie, I would definitely put Them in there. But it's a great question. But you named them yourself. Forbidden Planet is the template for Star Trek. Gojira, the first Godzilla, is great. Day There Stood Still is great. Fantastic Voyage. I would say that War of the Worlds. I love Byron Haskin's original War of the Worlds from 1953 and When Worlds Collide and all that. Off the top of my head.
Could you put The Thing in it or not?
Yeah, I would definitely put The Thing. And It Came from Outer Space. The original It Came from Outer Space. And
The Planet of the Apes, would that be considered?
That's
then?
68. So that
Okay.
would be during TOS, and same with 2001.
Okay.
But yeah. Let's see, what else? Scott Bartholomew says, I'm tired of interconnected storylines in movies. Standalone stories with each respective character is refreshing, which is why, again, Blue Beetle works. I agree. And Scott asks about the weather forecast in the area. Well, let's take a look. Where is the hurricane now? let's see what it says. It is supposed to start. Oh, you know what? It's gotten. It was going to start raining at 12 at midnight tonight. That has now been pushed back to 3 a.m. So it might not, but it's going to rain all day tomorrow. Nonstop. So we'll see, but that's better. That's better. Dan Candy says, Rob, I read the book Blind Sight, Peter Watt's Blind Sight, this week after you talked about it. It was a good book. I love Blind Sight. Blind Sight's one of my favorite modern science fiction novels. It's a crazy first contact story. It's really hard sci-fi, but what's really interesting about it, well, I really can't say what's really interesting about it because I don't want to spoil it, but let's just say that you've never met aliens like you've met in Blind Sight. And if you guys want to read a hard sci-fi novel, Blind Sight's worth reading. Wraith X7 says, surprisingly, the best rebooted DC Universe show is My Adventures with Superman, the new animated series on Adult Swim. I have not seen this. Have you guys seen this?
I haven't seen it yet, but I've heard a lot of talk about it. I haven't seen it yet personally.
Yeah, I haven't either, but I want to see it. And Wraith X7 goes on to say, as a longtime hip-hop fan who was there from the beginning, I hate how rap has turned into bad, generic mumble rap performed by studio gangsters.
See, you said it, I didn't. I'm glad, because the thing is, I didn't. I had my feelings about it, and what you're saying right now.
Well, let me ask you. Okay,
I just think that, I think again, and this is why I say that corporations have had influences on this, because for so many years they've been trying to dumb down hip hop.
Oh yeah, and
they didn't
they've
feel as though that basically we had a certain level of relevance, because again, there's been a message. No matter what the message is, there's been a message. Certain things that we talk about, and certain things that have been talked about, even from an industry standpoint, and how the industry has been exposed, they don't want that. They don't want that. They don't want you to expose them. So again, the only way, because they couldn't silence us any other way, is like, okay, cool. If we can't silence them, then let's just put out our own. Let's support artists and have these artists drowned out substance, drowned out conscious, drowned out what it is to basically have or being a true lyricist. They've drowned all that out and introduced all this mumble shit and expect you to gravitate towards it. And the thing is, like I said, I mean, look, bro, I'm a child, born in the 70s. I was born the year hip hop was established. I was born in 1973. Definitely. So to see the beginnings, all the, the artists, the incredible artwork, the artistry, and, just, the true conversations and the influences that hip hop has had culturally, to see where it's going now, I don't think it's in great shape. And a lot of it is because, the artist or the artists that we have now have allowed the influences from corporations to come in and tell them that they're good and support the bullshit that they're putting out. And even some of us that have actually been there since the inception of hip hop are supporting these individuals, because we want to see hip hop continue. But I think there's a way to do it, and I don't think this is the right way, to be quite honest.
But is there an audience for that? I mean, I'm not for this kind of mumble rap.
Oh yeah, it is. It is because it's out there and people are loving it. So it's.
I feel that way about modern Star Trek. I mean, let me ask you this.
Mm-hmm.
There is, I think, when you go back and you listen to Eric B. and Rakim, or you listen to Wu-Tang Clan, or you listen to Kendrick Lamar, pick your favorite, Biggie and Tupac. All the great lyricists, the people with, and the lyrical flow that we've had over the last 50 years. There's so many great examples of great hip hop. Do you think that the audiences just are not aware, or they're not discerning enough? Like, I find it strange. Like I sit there and I rail about modern Star Trek, and there's a lot of people and people I know, and I respect their opinion that like it, and I look at them and I'm like, I'm baffled, because it's not, people always say to me, oh, Rob, they either think that somehow I was going to be able to work on Star Trek, but because of Axanar, I ruined my chances. I'm like, I've never worked in TV like that. I don't have the experience to work on Star Trek, so I'm not jealous. The only thing I only want to see great stories well told. Yeah. And there's literally almost 1,000 episodes of Star Trek. Yeah. And of those, you can look at all these episodes of Star Trek that are demonstrably great. And yet people nowadays don't know the difference. And I'm kind of shocked by that. Like, they're getting something, oh, I like it. Is it comfort food for them? The same thing is probably true of hip hop. Like, how are people buying into something when you have people like Kendrick Lamar getting Pulitzer Prizes or whatever, making music, and then this mumble rap, and people are buying into it? Is it just because you've got younger audiences, influencers, all they know is TikTok and Instagram?
That's what they're targeting.
Right.
The younger generation, because they feel as though the only way to influence a certain direction is to get them while they're young and tell them that this is hip hop. So as they're force feeding them this bullshit.
Isn't it wild?
But if people like me and people who basically do appreciate substance in hip hop, if we talk about that, oh, we're old, we're haters.
Right.
You're just a hater. You're old. You're just a hater. You don't know. No, because the thing is, there are, even within this particular generation, there are artists who are demonstrating that hip hop can still live and thrive and have substance. There are artists out there that I can handpick them, but it's just a simple fact. There's an oversaturation of bullshit. And then basically, here's the thing. It was crazy. There's an artist. I don't want to, to say his name is just giving him credit. And I don't like really putting people out there and put them on blast. And pretty much you'll see it. His name is, he associates himself with a Uzi. I'll say that. He was on The Breakfast Club one day. It wasn't The Breakfast Club. I think he was on, I forget what show he was on. I think it was, I forget the name of the actual show, but they asked him to freestyle. And what he said to me, or well, not to me, but what he said when I watched it, what he said, it personified the way this younger generation looks at hip hop before its time. He told the DJ, yo, don't put on that old shit. Don't put on those old beats. Don't put on that. No, I'm not rapping over that. I'm not. There was one artist who basically said,
wait, did he not freestyle? He just said he.
It was because he was trash.
Well, yeah,
he was trash and he couldn't freestyle. That was the whole thing, is that he couldn't do it. But instead of saying that, he was like, yeah, don't put that old shit on. Don't put that on. I'm not rhyming.
Well, I find that's a common, what I find really distressing about all this, and it's not because I'm old.
Yeah.
It's that when I was younger, and I would go to science fiction conventions starting at like 12, 13, 14. I could carry on discussions with people in their 30s and 40s about a book. If you want to talk about Robert Heinlein's Stranger in a Strange Land or something, I could sit there and hold my own and have a conversation with a much older person. And we weren't I wasn't looking at the older person going, you're old, so you have nothing to say. We were talking about this book and the influence of this book and all of that. I really honestly believe, and I see this everywhere on social media. And it's not to put young people down, because it's not all young people, but they don't know anything. I mean, literally, when I watch reaction channels, I'm always blown away. I'm like, how do you not know? Like, if you're a music fan and you're out there,
bro,
how do you not know these things? Like, there's this woman, she's really cute, and I watch her shows. It's called like the something voice, the sentimental voice, or she's like a voice coach. And she goes back and she's watching these bands like she's watching Heart. And she's like, I've never heard this. I'm like, how are you a voice coach and you don't know
Art?
all of the rock bands? She'd never seen Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm like, and I even like her. I like her, and I'm watching this. I'm like, okay, when I was growing up as a kid, you know, I was listening to AM radio, album-oriented rock radio, and I heard everything. I was listening to 60s stuff. You know, we knew everything. Like, we got a taste of all of it. And you had a working knowledge of, like, you know, you kind of go from, and you had elementary school, and like in junior high, people started playing Pink Floyd records, you know, and you'd grow older, and people had a taste of all this stuff. And you had to have a vague working knowledge of pop culture the same way that you had a vague working knowledge of politics, the world around us. Like, everybody that I went to school with had a working knowledge of what was going on in the world.
Yep.
I feel now there's no knowledge of it at all.
Yeah,
and
bro.
and it's not to put, you know, I know that I only see this through like Elizabeth and Zoe, who are, you know, 20 and 22 respectively. And Zoe just got back from France. She knows a little bit, but they know nothing of the world. And they don't know anything about pop culture at all, but before a certain amount of time, before like 2000.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to me, like, if you're going to rap, you're working in an art form that's only 50 years old. So if you're going to like rap, how do you not go back and look
and study
because
and know it, bro? But and the thing is, just, you know what, bro? To say that, you have to have an appreciation. Like, literally, bro, you have to have a level of appreciation for where you are and how you got there because of everybody else who walked in those same spaces, bro. And to completely shit on the legacy that is hip hop and everybody who came before. Like, I've heard it all, bro, and I've seen it all, and I'm like, yo, that's, you know, the thing is, bro, I don't put it this way. No matter what you're into, you know, as far as a musician, a great musician will have an eclectic ear and hear everything,
right,
study everything, and have an appreciation for everything. Even if it's something that you don't like, you'll still listen to it and be like, okay, well, I can understand what they were going for. That may not be the genre for me, but I have an appreciation for what what they've contributed. And I think a lot of that in every genre is gone. Even in rock, they experience the same thing. And you know, pretty much, I'm pretty sure in country, they experience the same thing. You know, there's always the lack of appreciation for what came before. But when we say things like that, we're old, we're angry, we're bitter, we're upset,
But
we're just mad. And it's not the case. It's just like, yo, I'm only telling you this because if you don't do it, you're going to get exposed. You're going to get exposed.
Well, yeah,
And
like you said,
some
like
of these-
I mean, and what's really interesting to me is I have these conversations with people, and I'm trying to explain why I don't like something, and I realize that the people that I'm trying to explain why I don't like something they don't know enough to understand my complaint. Like, I'm trying to explain, like, I'll give you an example. It's from a Star Trek example. I'm trying to explain why I have a real problem with what Star Trek Strange New Worlds has done with the Gorn. And because I don't understand the life cycle of the Gorn as depicted, the way they've depicted the young burst forth from a human host or whatever host. They like run around in the wild. These younglings are running around. They're killing people. They're killing each other. And I don't understand, how does that turn into a spacefaring race of people that have science and technology and schooling, and they have as much technology as you've not shown me this leap. And people are like, well, why do you care? And I'm like, because I can't believe it. They've just shown me monsters that are born with a certain way, and you're asking me to believe the way. There's nothing analogous like that in nature that goes from the life cycle of the Gorn into. So I can't believe it.
Yeah.
And when I complain about that, it's like, well, what does it matter? I'm like, okay, it matters because I'm an intelligent human being that understands basic biology and the basic structure of a civilization, and, you know, world building in science fiction that has been a part of science fiction since a Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's court, or even go before that. And it's because nobody has any sense of history or understanding. And it gets frustrating to try and talk to people because, like you said, then they just fall back. You're a hater. I get the Simpsons meme. To me, that's it's frustrating to get somebody to throw the Simpsons meme at me, because that to me says that they're stupid. And I don't want to feel that way about people. I get the boomer. I'm like, well, I'm not a boomer. I'm old, but I'm not a boomer. So you don't. And I'm like, do you know what a boomer is? And whenever I call them up on that, it's like, well, it doesn't matter. You're kind of like a boomer. And I'm like, no, you're actually using the word boomer, which is, and I wonder, do you know what a boomer is? Like half the time when people are throwing that at me, I'm like, you don't know what one is, do you? And that's the thing that bothers me the most. You can I don't give a fuck what you think about me. You can insult me all you want. What bothers me is when you use an insult, you don't know what it means.
Yeah.
And I'm like, where's the world going? Like, I'm thinking about, I'll be shuffling off this mortal coil and I won't have to worry about it. But I'm like, wow, man. When I'm talking to people in this certain space, and I'm like, you guys you really don't know. Like, you haven't seen. And to me, it's a kind of a cultural, like, if you work in music, I mean, Prince in his teens produced his first albums. He didn't just play every instrument, he produced them. He recorded them, he overdubbed them, he mixed them. He did all of that by himself. And he wasn't just a prodigy. He was also he also knew technology. He understood how sound worked. It's not that he could shred on a guitar and play the piano, play the drums. He understood how to record. He understood where to put a microphone. And he learned how to. And I think today, I'm like, does anybody, I mean, there's a lot of brilliant kids that are programming video games. They're learning how to do a lot of digital technology stuff. So that's very cool. But I'm like, do you guys know color theory? You know, when I interview the costume designers for Designing Hollywood, they all spend time in museums. You know, they've all gone and looked at the great painters, because those like big frescoes were the only way that we could understand what colors existed back then. Because those paintings are the only records. There's no photographic evidence. So you look at paintings, and great paintings show you, oh, if there was a shaft of sunlight coming down, they had these kinds of reds and blues, and you could see what kind of fabrics were being used. And all these costume designers, they all tell me the same thing. They almost all of them want to get the hell out of the business because they have a real hard time dealing with young people.
Really?
You know, oh yeah, because they don't have a thick skin. Like when you're working with actors and stuff, you know how it is. You develop a way to speak to people, and you have to have a thick skin. You know, you're throwing shit back at one another. You're having that kind of a body relationship with somebody that they're not. Younger people can't have conversations. They're like, and and I hear this across the board, and it's a really interesting thing because they haven't had experience with people, and they haven't gone out and learned things for their own sake. Like we all learn stuff. No one told me to go like science fiction movies. It just happened. You know, for whatever reason, since I was a little kid, I was interested in all this stuff, and I'm like, wow, that means I can go get books. You know, it wasn't just something to because the people that were writing Star Trek also wrote novels. Like Richard Matheson, who wrote a Star Trek episode, Robert Bloch, who wrote a Star Trek episode, wrote Psycho, you know, and Harlan Ellison, and all these people, and then they wrote scripts on other TV shows. You know, like George Clayton Johnson wrote for The Twilight Zone, so did Richard Matheson. And then you're looking for these things. You're going like, oh, and then you have to get their books and read their books, and then you get a collection of their short stories. You know, and it led you, these tendrils would suck you in, and you had to know all of it. You collectively, comic book writers.
Yeah.
You know, when you start following comic book writers, they're going from book to book to book to book to book because you like there. When I started reading comic books seriously, and when I really got back into it in the early '80s, I started going to the comic book stores looking for certain writers. You know, Frank Miller wrote Ronin. Well, I didn't see Frank Miller's. I wasn't reading comics when he was doing Elektra and Bullseye and all that. I'm like, well, I got to go back and read that. You know, and you had to find this stuff, and it was a natural outgrowth because you just wanted to know, and it wasn't for anyone else. It was for your own edification. And people are always saying to me, even on YouTube, like, "Wow, you know a lot about this stuff." And I always think like, but that was sort of just a natural if you're a film fan, you know, you want to go back. I'd want to go back and see everything. You know, and I don't feel that people have that attitude anymore, and it's odd to me.
Robert, Tom says that he sent one of those milestone super chats. I guess it's different from the other kind. And I think he says it wasn't read. I don't know what it says, but he said it's
a milestone super chat.
Yeah.
I haven't read all the super chats yet.
Okay.
But, I mean, I did read Tom Jr. Jackson's. I did read 2 of his super chats.
Okay.
The Lael one saying, "Great to see you guys." And he did say one where that. I see it. You know, I know what he's talking about. He also said, "I'm going Monday to see Blue Beetle. I went and saw a small indie movie called The Miracle Club, a film about grief and regret with hints of humor and a great cast."
Nice.
That's a good. You know, there's a science fiction movie that opened this weekend that everyone is telling me is great. Chris Gore said it was great, and aliens have come to Earth, and their entertainment is kind of watching us. So it's like one social media, and it's got a really interesting name. And everyone's been telling me it's great, and it's got. Let's see. I got to tell you what.
It's in the theaters?
It's in the theaters, and let me tell you what it is. It's called, if I can find it, and why can't I find it? It's got a really weird title. Actually, before I do that, let me just read what Tack, our friend Tack, sends in a tip and says, I genuinely adore Thor 4 because it's what I want from Marvel. Unique voices from genius directors. No matter how you feel about the movie, Taika made the movie he wanted to make, and I adored how personal it was from that perspective. Top 10 MCU. Okay, here's the thing. I think the sentiment is great, but he is still working within the MCU. So I think that within those constraints, I want a director, because James Gunn certainly brought something to the Guardians movies that was him, but he was still working within the confines of what the MCU wanted to do. And I think Thor 4 was too silly. It went too far.
There were a lot of. The thing is, he wrote the story that he wanted to write, but sometimes the story that you want to write doesn't translate well with the viewers, especially for people who know the lore. When you're bringing in a character such as Gore, the God Butcher, yet he butchers not one single god. That's a problem. When you're bringing in a subject matter such as cancer, when it comes to a character, Jane Foster, when you're bringing that in, you have to kind of make references and play it at a certain, to her being who she is. Isn't she like what, an astrophysicist? Or
Yeah.
what is she?
Yes.
Yes. Who knows fuck all about her symptoms in a sense, or doesn't, or is kind of, I, it, a lot of it in that movie, a lot what was going on made absolutely zero sense.
She would know
Yes,
what stage 4 cancer
she would
is.
know what stage 4 cancer is and would take it extremely serious. And yes, I mean, but again, it was just glossed over and it wasn't touched. And I just thought that that was poorly done. It was a serious tone that needed to be addressed. And I guess, and I get it, you want to make light out of a situation, but that right there, like seriously, it, to me, those elements, those key elements, was a disservice to the character, and you made him a bumbling idiot the entire time. That to me, I'm sorry, and it is going to be a difference of opinion with everybody else, and I get that, and you have a right to your opinion. But to me, nah, it missed the mark, and I haven't watched that movie since, and I will never watch
I
it
mean, they
again.
expected us to take him seriously at the end after all of
Yeah,
the
nah,
nonsense.
man, nah. There was nope, nah, at all. Nope, not at all. I could not take it seriously, not even halfway through the film. I could not. And I'm so glad they got the Guardians out earlier on. So I wouldn't want to be a part of that bullshit. It just didn't sit well with me at all. I absolutely loathe that movie. I cannot stand it. And for him to be, look, I want people to understand. I like Taika Waititi
I do
outside
too.
of the franchise because he's an incredible writer. He has an incredible vision. But when you let him run freely in a franchise that is supposed to have a certain tone and it is supposed to establish this world a certain way, and you let him do or tell the story that he wanted to tell this way, like he was unleashed and it just didn't translate well. And I think we should have saw signs of what was to come because he probably even had an influence on that episode of What If of Thor, because I hated that episode at all as well. And What If? This is the Thor that we actually got in this film, and it was just a complete. It was a different direction as to where. I mean, come on, man, you're coming off of something that is. I mean, seriously, half the population being snapped away, you having to live with the simple fact that there were so many people that died, mistakes that you've made. Yes, okay, he comes back, he gets himself back in order, gets himself back in shape. But a lot of that is post-traumatic, bro. It is. But yet you're a goof. Like it doesn't make sense to me, bro. And it did not. Look, Rob, the amount of what people see in you when it comes to rants about Star Trek, imagine that 1,000-fold from me sitting in the theater the entire time. I
Oh,
felt like I wanted to fuck everybody up in that theater. That's how angry I was for no reason. I wanted to go down each aisle smacking the shit out of everybody. That's how I felt. And they didn't have anything to do with it. And I would have said sorry afterwards. But I was upset. And I literally, and it's because I love Thor, bro. I love
right.
Thor as a
Well,
character.
the whole
I
movie
love
was
his character. And it was terrible, bro.
Russell
It was
Crowe's
terrible.
Russell Crowe was, I don't know what he was doing. There was nothing serious in the whole movie, and then they
Yeah.
would dip into serious realms. And I feel the same way. I can't that movie. I can't because I really liked Ragnarok a lot.
Yeah, bro.
And Ragnarok
Yeah.
he had a balance.
Ragnarok was good. And it
yeah,
was balanced.
yeah, it was balanced. By the way, the name of the movie that I was trying to think of is a movie called Landscape with Invisible Hand.
Yeah, I never heard of it.
Is
I
it,
know.
is it an independent film?
Yeah, it's an indie film, and here's the log line. When an occupying alien species' bureaucratic rule and advanced technology leaves most of Earth impoverished and unemployed, two teenagers hatch a risky plan to ensure their families' futures. And Tiffany Haddish is one of the people in it. And I'm actually a Tiffany Haddish fan. And it looks goofy, but I've heard it's quite good. So I
Yeah, I've
definitely
never heard
want
of
to
it.
see that. I know.
Never heard of it.
Alexander Dukas says Rob plus Squad, made of awesome.
Yay! Thank you.
Glenn Mark says, I want to option my book, Rob. It could be a horror about JD finding a malevolent pink and purple flying unicorn hiding in her backyard. Yeah, I'd have to read it first. NRJ 1984 says it would be nice to see a non-Marvel or DC comic be successful on the big screen. I personally love a Wildcats or Savage Dragon film. Hey, I would too. The problem is, are you going to get somebody to put in the kind of money that you need to make something like that? I mean, we saw that with Bloodshot, with Vin Diesel trying to do a Valiant book. It didn't go well. The problem with these kinds of books is that they don't have... Hollywood is never going to spend the money on something that doesn't have immediate name value. Like we were talking about, kids who don't... I can't believe that there's a rapper that doesn't know how to freestyle. I still can't...
There's a lot of them. There's
I
a lot of
I
them
still
out there,
can't-
bro. And even if you don't, it's okay. But don't disrespect what came before you.
But how do you become a rapper if you can't freestyle?
Some
I mean,
of them
didn't you
are
guys
very
watch
good
8
writers.
Mile?
Yeah.
I
There's
mean,
some of them that are really good writers. They can write, but they just don't freestyle. And then there are people who say they freestyle, but a lot of it is pre-written. It happens, bro.
That's so weird.
There's only a few individuals that are blessed with the gift. Here's the thing. All right, I'll put it to you this way. So, and I'll say this a certain way. Like, so when you hear people like Jay-Z, who says that, you know, he doesn't write anything down. He goes in the studio. He just spits. That's not hard. And I'll tell you why it's not hard. Because anybody can split a line, stand back, think of another line, and just let it roll off the tongue. Record, stop, chop, record, stop, chop. That's something that can be done.
Yep.
You don't have to write it down. You can come straight off the dome, but not be repetitive. You're not actually consistently spitting a line. You're just recording a fraction of what you thought about and then coming back and saying it again. That's not hard. Just because you haven't written it down doesn't mean it's not written here. You know what I mean? So I'm just being real. It's not hard. I'm not saying he's not gifted and a genius. I'm just saying it's not hard, and it's not as spectacular as people want to believe. There are individuals out there, like, for instance, I'll tell you, who can do it straight off the dome because he's done it. Common, straight off the dome, live.
Oh, yeah.
Can do it. Non-stop, non-written. Black Thought, straight off the dome, not written. He can do it. He spit a 9-minute freestyle, bro. Crazy.
Common just did I think he was on Broadway earlier this summer.
Yeah.
His first time on Broadway, and certainly not a surprise for him to be there, but that doesn't surprise me. He's incredibly talented. And first time I ever saw him, really, he was in a Western. I can't remember the name of it, but I just was so impressed with him, but I don't remember the name of the Western. I watched him in the show. I can't remember.
Irene wants to know this, so I'm just going to show it to her. That's what they're.
And Darth Plato says that he had a super chat at the beginning of the stream, Robert, and that he doesn't believe it was read.
Well, yeah, it was about Greyhound.
Darth Plato, is that the one? Let's see if he responds.
Yeah, we talked about Greyhound. And you said you guys were talking about the whole historic, unless it was another one.
He says, Rob missed my tip. Was it a tip?
It was a tip about Greyhound.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Darth Plato. Is it the Greyhound one?
Yeah, was it the Greyhound one?
Yeah, he's going to...
Tack also says... oh, yeah, I already got that one. But I'm looking. I'm seeing that... he asked about if I'd seen Greyhound yet. The movie is badass, and we talked about the Pacific, and we talked about that's the only one that I have.
Okay.
Yeah, that was 2 hours ago. We did that.
Wow, was it 2 hours ago?
Yeah.
What time? Oh wow, it's almost
Yeah.
2:30.
Yeah, we're getting to the end.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think that the show's been going on so long, people forget. Chemist says we can all agree that Kevin Feige is one of the greatest producers ever, which is true. So in y'all's humble opinion, what happened? He obviously has a say, and it's obviously not the say, or is it? That's a I have to be honest. I don't know what happened. Like I really is because they suddenly had the big difference between phases 1, 2, and 3 and phases 4 and 5 is in phase 3 there was no Disney Plus shows. And I think that the pressure of putting out all those Disney Plus shows seriously derailed the MCU. And then within, like, they had to change Falcon and Winter Soldier because it was about a plague, a disease that was going to get released. And then COVID happened and they had to change it. So I think that has to have played a part. But I have to say, I'm baffled, Chemist. I don't understand.
You know what? I feel as though, bro, the change happened between his position and what he was allowed to do once Bob Iger made that transition over to Bob Chapek.
Chapek, yeah.
I think Chapek had a lot to do with what happened during that period, because the thing is, with Iger in around that time, a lot of things were carefully constructed. The artist had more control. Artists had more control. The creatives had more control. You know, and you know, there was help that was provided at that time. They had direction. You know what I mean? Now, you know, that when Chapek came in, it changed the dynamic because, again, jobs or positions were taken away from creatives. They were given less control, you know, and that's the same thing that happened, you know, when we're, you know, talking about, what's his name again? I keep forgetting his name.
Bob Iger?
Not Bob Iger.
Chapek?
Feige?
Kevin Feige.
Yeah.
That's what happened to him. You know what I mean? Things were taken away from him. He didn't have that creative control that he wanted to have. So now it's just like, now that whole transition and everything's going back to Iger, it's just like, now you're licking your wounds, going back, trying to fix things that have been disrupted. Because it just felt like Chapek was allowing everything to happen. Oh yeah, you got that idea? Let that happen. Let's go. Let's go. Let's make this money back. Let's do this and do that, instead of thinking about it. I think a lot of that happened during that period, bro. And it stretched a lot, way too thin. A lot was allowed. There was not thought behind it. And now it's just like, okay, how do we fix it? Bro. Here's the thing, man. It's like, I feel so bad for Kevin Feige right now, bro. I feel bad because, number one, you got to fix a situation that was kind of broken. And then you have a lot of actors and writers who hate Bob Iger right now. They do. Yeah. So it's like, you're in a terrible position. And I don't know what's going to happen, bro, going forward. I hope and pray that they can fix it, bro, and get back to look, it doesn't have to mean, like, sometimes we got to let go what came before, but give us the same magic. You can create new magic and make it good. You know what I mean? Like, just make it good. Writing needs to be good, bro. That's what it all boils down. Writing needs to be good, and decisions have to be made that you're supporting your writers, you're supporting your directors, you're supporting your actors and their vision, and you're getting the fuck out the way. Execs need to get the fuck out the way. Get out the fucking way.
But
that's just plain and simple.
Also, if it is going to be a B movie, like what I would consider Blue Beetle to be, no pun intended with the letter B.
No, I agree with you.
If it is going to be a B movie, then just let it be that movie, versus telling the public that this is going to be the best superhero movie you have ever seen.
Don't set it up for failure. Yep.
Yeah, it's quite a declaration. Let us just go ahead and experience, if that has to be a stage in the storytelling, that's fine. But
Yeah.
you know, let it be that stage, and then we can understand it, and then it can grow. It can become something bigger.
Because the last 3 days, now again, Blue Beetle was good, but the last 3 days, the actual, profit hasn't been good. It
No.
hasn't.
And they
At
knew.
all.
I mean, it's made what they expected, but what they expected to make was unfortunately, I mean, $25 million for a super. This is why a Wildcats. I mean, Blue Beetle's an established DC character, but you imagine.
Yeah.
I love Jim Lee's Wildcats,
Mm-hmm.
but if people don't even know what that is, they'd be unless a Wildcats movie would be enormously expensive. You could never do it. I think there was an animated series for a while, I think, but I don't know. But yeah, I mean, Blue Beetle, that's what happens. Scott Bartholomew says, I appreciate all three of you for this forum to express ideas freely. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott Bartholomew.
That's very nice, Scott. Joe Panora says, Lael is so right. That's why all I listen to is KRS-One, Big L, Nas, Cameron, The Woo. I can't get behind modern hip-hop.
There you go. As long as it's alive. And here's the thing, bro. Underground is still there. Underground is still alive. You can search and you can find the music that you're looking for. You can weed out the bullshit that we see and hear right now. You can actually still find hip-hop that is true hip-hop, even in this modern age. You can. So I salute you on that one, definitely, man.
Hip Hop Happens wants to speak as a panelist. I'll bet you do. I mean, you don't understand. This panel has years of experience. We are professionals. we speak from the heart. But I used to go on afterwards. I can't do it tonight, and take randos on this show. But that was when I was drinking. It's too hard. Now it's like I like doing these 3-hour shows when I'm drinking just water. I feel much better. Look at my skin. But yeah, I can't. Maybe one day I'll bring that back. But hip hop happens. Maybe if we do that, I'll maybe we'll do that. Chemist says, make generational knowledge and communities great again. Let's please not lose a generation of knowledge. Well, I'll tell you something. That is I think in our the corporatization of our businesses, that's happening, especially in Hollywood. The people that have been around the longest, who have the largest salaries, are the first to get cut. And they're the people with the generational knowledge. It seems so counterproductive. Well, let's just get people that aren't as experienced to come in and do these jobs. Well, when you're dealing with things like, 100 years worth of a film catalog, and you've got all of these movies, and you don't have people that work at your studio that know what movies you've made, which is the case at Warner Brothers. And you're like, what are you guys doing? Who are you hiring? It's really generational knowledge, the way it's being chipped away at, and it's not like it's being replenished. I mean, my God, you have people writing Star Trek that have never seen all the Star Trek episodes because there's so many now. But I'm like, and what's interesting is they're not even writing. That's why the writing in Star Trek is so bad, because they're writing generic TV. Well, I'll put this relationship story. I'll have your mother-in-law come visit, which was an episode of Star Trek this season. Your fucking mother-in-law. I mean, literally, it's like you have 10 episodes, you're making a science fiction, action, adventure, allegorical tale, and let's do funny Spock stories. It's so funny. I always tell people, I'm like, they did a funny Spock story in the first season of the original series, and in it they go down to this planet Omicron Ceti 3, where there's a human colony there. And the human colonies seemed bucolic and nice. And it turns out that the secret of this colony is everybody's been hit with these spores, these plant spores. And they kind of make everybody serene. And Spock gets hit by these spores. And a woman that was in love with him when he was on Earth, and she was stationed on Earth, this woman named Leela Kalomi, when Spock is hit by these spores, the inhibitions or his controls that don't allow him to access his emotions, he suddenly becomes Mr. Lovey-dovey, and he falls in love with this woman. And it's done in a very adult manner. And all this shenanigans go down. And at the end of the episode, Spock says, I was happy about what went on. And it's like, oh, man. Because what people don't understand is they've made Spock like a teenager. Like, he's not fully formed yet. Like, we met him on the original. He's been through Starfleet Academy. He has a mother who's a human being since he was a fucking kid. I mean, she gave birth to him, and they're like, well, I don't really understand him. Are you fucking kidding me? I mean, give me a... You're telling me that Spock's only is not as formed as he was. Give me a break. He was an ensign on starships. He's the science officer on board the Enterprise, and like they make it seem like, I don't know who I am. It's so annoying. It's so ridiculous because that's the only way they can write. Well, he's not fully formed. What is he, in elementary fucking school now? I hate it so much. But in that episode, it does kind of the same things that they try and do. Like, let's have a wacky Spock episode. In the original Star Trek, it's incredibly mature, and in order to snap him out of it, Kirk has to literally be racist against Vulcans. He calls Spock, because he has to get Spock mad to break the spell of these spores. And what he says to Spock is really fucking harsh. And it's totally racist against Vulcans, and it's like, you're a half-breed, and all this. It's so much more mature.
He had to say to kind of get him out of whatever. Yeah.
Right next, and you had the gall to make love to that woman. I mean, it's fucking great. And you watch that episode, and you're like, where is this kind of writing? And the reason that I'm so upset by modern Star Trek is the writing was better 57 years ago. If you gave it the same, if you had the technology and all the effects, and if you took the exact same script from the original, not every episode of Star Trek, but I would say a good 75% of them, and you just took the scripts, I would love to do this as an experiment. Take the exact same script and just shoot it. But with the modern technology and the way it looks, people would be blown away. They'd be like, oh my God, that episode was so good. Whatever. I'm still going to be mad about Star Trek forever. Institutional knowledge, man. Let's see. Where are we? Kenneth Colton says, sending love to you, Rob and Lael. You guys make Saturday nights super chill and great for the film fandom space.
Thank you. That's so kind.
Appreciate that, man. We try.
We do try. And that is very nice. And Scott Bartholomew says, today's kids are socially and intellectually stunted. I think they just, I don't know if they're stunted so much as they know different things. I mean, they grew up with social media, so they haven't had to go out. Everything comes to them. And when everything's coming to you, you are not going out and getting things.
Yeah, you're not having those experiences in real time.
No, and that's the difference. When we were interested in something, we had to go out and get it. And so when everything's coming at you, your interest isn't being piqued. You're just taking in information. You're watching TikTok videos, but there's nothing in it that makes you go, oh, I'd like to go learn about that. I'm going to go to the record store and flip through records and buy things I've never heard of before. Or it's the total opposite of what we're doing. It's a whole different thing. The difference is that it's filling people up with gobbledygook, and they're not seeking out for themselves. That's why there's so many performative activists on TikTok, because the only input they actually get that's genuine is when they come out and go, well, these are my pronouns today, and people are like, oh, that's so brave of you, and so they get input back in, but they don't even know what that even means. Like, no one's even read. When was the last time anybody read books on sexuality and gender? And they don't. They just watch.
Reading.
Yeah, what's reading?
They learn everything from a 30-second TikTok video, bro.
It's really weird. It is kind of bizarre, which I don't understand. Wraith X7 says, it ticks me off that a great album like the album About Nothing by Whale is underrated and didn't get the recognition and promotion it deserved. Well, that's another problem. There's so much stuff out there that doesn't.
Yeah, doesn't at all. Because it doesn't follow a trope. It doesn't follow a formula that the industry tells you need to follow. You know, when independency came out and when people basically developed the process of, you know, getting paid independently as artists by going out, doing shows, going on tour, you know, when the label tried to restrict them from distribution and when artists created their own lane in the digital world, what did the industry do? They created the 360 rule. Yeah. So when they did that, they tried to restrict. So then that didn't work. So then they tried to find a different way. That's what I'm saying. It's a way to basically silence the artist. They figured that they could actually do it. And they're trying every ounce of ways, anything that they can actually do to silence a true artist in substance in hip hop.
Yeah.
And the problem is that it's better. They feel it's better to not say shit at all. Don't say anything. Just throw a whole bunch of gibberish on an album and we'll make you famous. And that's just the way to go. That's just the way it is.
They've even compared the mumbling rap, or at least tried to associate it with a form of like jazz scat.
They called it something else. Yeah, they didn't want to call it. They said they tried to give, and we've been, the thing is, hip hop has been trying to tell the industry, like, look, give it a different name. Don't call it hip hop. Give it something totally different, because it's not hip hop the way we know it. But again, if you say that, then you're a hater or you're old.
Right.
This is the thing, bro. It's terrible. It's terrible.
I get that all the time.
It is
the
terrible,
Simpsons
man.
meme.
Yeah, bro. Yeah, it's terrible, man.
Chemist says, "Get him out of here, Tom." Does that mean that there's somebody in the chat who is a dick?
Yes.
I believe there was.
Oh.
I believe there was. I didn't see it, but I believe there was. But I think Tom was already on the top of that.
Okay.
And I think Mikey Lito put some people in their place as well. So
nice.
Shout out to Mikey.
I love Mikey. Mikey suffers no fools.
Mikey gives. When I look at Mikey's like, yeah, I gives no fucks. I'll say what I need to say, and if you don't like it, get the fuck out. That's what I love about Mikey. He don't give a shit.
Me too.
He don't give a shit. He doesn't.
But he knows a good William Friedkin movie when he sees it. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, he does.
Chemist says, Wheezy F Baby, one of the best off the dome, sir.
Wheezy, another one. He's phenomenal. Here's the thing. A lot of people, because he can exist in so many different lanes, but Wayne is an intelligent individual, and he can make music with substance. But even if he doesn't want to, his shit is still hot. People don't give him the credit that he needs, but he's still hot, and he will always be recognized because he is a student of hip hop. You know, he was born in a space where hip hop was relevant, and he was relevant with it, so he knows. Definitely. Right. So I give him his credit. Definitely, I'll give Wayne his credit all day, every day. Wayne is nice. Andre 3000 is another cat that I cannot wait till his album drops. He's putting out another album. He's incredible, bro. He's an incredible artist.
Yeah.
So I can't wait. Yeah.
Scott Bartholomew says, I hope James Gunn doesn't waste this opportunity. I think he's going to blow everybody away. Yeah. I think James Gunn is going to make a Superman. His whole career has come up to this. And remember, he came out of Trauma. He wrote a Scooby-Doo movie. He wrote Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead. I think that he's going to knock the Superman movie out of the park.
I just think he just needs to be quiet. Don't say anything else.
Right,
Don't say anything else. Don't say anything else. Please don't. Just don't say anything else. Just do what you got to do and just let everybody think what they want. Let them decide once the piece comes out. I mean, because the thing is, what he's going to have to do is try to find a way to separate the DCEU from where he's going right now in the direction that he's trying to take it. You know what I mean? Like, he has to find a way, and I think somehow the best way is to be silent and let your product speak for itself. Don't try to justify it. Just go in and just let it speak for itself. That's it. Be silent, be still. Be silent, be still.
I think he'll go radio silent when he starts making the movie. If he'd be making it right now if the strike wasn't on.
He needs to. And the thing is, bro, here's the thing, bro. I love Gal Gadot. I do, unapologetically.
I do too.
And here's the thing, bro. I hate. This is another thing to hate. And I'm prefacing this before I say what I really want to say. To sit there and call an individual or say that an actress isn't talented. Oh, nah, she's not a draw. She's not talented. Wonder Woman made money. The first film made money.
Yeah, it did.
And she was part of it. To sit there to say that she can't lead, she's not a good lead, she's not a good whatever, this, that, and the third, bro. Because I've heard this, and I don't like when people say it. Because I think she is talented. She has a level of talent, and she's just getting better with time. She continues to get better. But if James Gunn, as much as I love Wonder Woman, and I love Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman, if he has to reboot, then reboot. If that's what he has to do, then reboot. If he wants to make her Wonder Woman, then so be it. Let it go. Let her be whoever she's going to be and whoever he wants her to be, and just enjoy cinematic film and don't debate back and forth. When it's going to be, but it is what it is. But if he has to reboot, then just reboot.
Oh, he has to.
That.
I mean, I think what people don't understand is the entire approach to what James Gunn's going to do to the DC universe is going to feel very, very different than what we're getting now. As a matter of fact, I would dare say that I would expect his Superman movie is going to feel it's when you're not seeing a superhero on the movie, if Superman is not on the movie screen, you're seeing Clark Kent and Lois, you're going to feel like almost like you're in a different kind of a movie. It's not going to feel like an MCU movie. It's going to feel like something else. And when you meet other superheroes, it's going to also be very different because it's all going to be very matter of fact. I think it's hard for me to explain this, but I think I have a handle on what he's going to do. And it's kind of like, and if I could explain it, it's kind of like when you go and you watch Richard Donner's Superman the movie, and when after the first beginning in Krypton and all that, when you first get to New York. It's set in New York. Like, I mean, it's Metropolis, but you're in New York. You're at the Daily Planet, and it's very much in the real world. There's no blue screen or anything. They went and shot on a real set that appears like you're in a real newsroom in the real world. And it's very different from the feeling of it. And when you see Superman going after cat burglars and rescuing Air Force One and all that, it feels very different. James Gunn is going to bring that kind of realism, I think, to what we're going to see. The same way, like if you watch Peacemaker. Peacemaker has all this crazy shit going on, but it's still like people in the real world. Like, they went out and shot real places, and they're out in the woods somewhere. So it doesn't feel like you're watching something shot against green screens or whatever, and people are kind of... They have a naturalness to them, if that makes any sense.
I just hope, bro, like literally, because we're talking about Superman, bro, and if anything, Superman needs a win. The franchise needs a win. I just hope that it's not over the top jokey, bro.
No, I don't think it's going to be.
That's what I'm afraid. I hope not, and I hope he understands because he is listening. I just hope it's not over the top jokey, bro. The thing is, tell the story, make it lighthearted, make it, what it's supposed to be without over the top jokes. Like that's the thing is when it drowns out the substance, when it's this over the top jokes. And I think that, honestly, bro, like he put it this way. When he made Guardians of the Galaxy, it was so uniquely different from what we were used to. And he told a great story with the first film. And it was great. First one came out, second one. But the problem with that was, just like even the same thing when we talk about films like Deadpool, is that when it's the first of its kind and people see that it's successful, then they try to follow the same thing.
Yeah,
and it becomes repetitive.
I think James Gunn's going to do something very, very different.
I hope
It's going to
so.
feel different, and it's
hope
going to
so, bro.
immediately establish that, okay, because here's the thing. The same way that the Christopher Nolan Batman movies are unto themselves, the way they were shot, they're very much in the of quote unquote the real world. You know, he's shot on the streets of Chicago. When you're not on a green screen. You know, you went, and when Bruce Wayne is going to events, going to like a dinner where he pretends he's drunk with two girls or something. It's shot in real places. It feels very different than an MCU movie. James Gunn's going to bring more of that, as opposed to Zack Snyder's Justice League took place in Zack Snyder land. Like it was all designed. Like Man of Steel is completely shot handheld. The entire movie is handheld. And then in Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, you see the skies, like you hardly ever see a real sky, like at night. You know, it's all this painted. It doesn't. It takes place in this operatic world of Zack Snyder's, and if you like that, which I like that take on the DC characters, I found it was the storyline itself that lost me sometimes, but that was a much more operatic take. James Gunn's going to bring it all back down to earth. And I think
so.
the same way that that's all how I can only describe it. I mean, I can see what I think what he's going to do, but it's going to be very different than what we've seen before.
I again, I'm divorcing. I don't put actors ahead of the story, bro. As long as the story is basically incredible, that's where I'm at. I know a lot of people love Cavill. I love a lot of people, and I love, Gal Gadot, Ben Affleck. But I don't put actors ahead of the story. I want the story to really, really, really speak volumes and support the actor's performance. Plain and simple.
Do you know what?
Bro.
Do you know what I think that we were missing from Henry Cavill? Like, we never saw a scene in the movie where Henry Cavill, Lois, and Clark went and did something normal. Like they were in the middle of they're walking down a city street. Sun's out, hustle and bustle of Metropolis, and they walk in to grab a coffee, and they're discussing like some kind of a story, or they're discussing politics, or there's some kind of argument or something, and they do something ordinary, something people do every day. There was never a moment. I mean, you can see like, okay, well, Superman went to her apartment, they got in the bathtub together. I don't mean that. I mean, they're out in the real world when something normal happened, and they established that this is the world these characters live in. So before it becomes fantastical, it's going to be very grounded and down to earth, and we as an audience will recognize, oh, we live in that world. That's kind of how I think it's going to go, and it'll go from there, I think. Scott Bartholomew says, I would like to see a reimagining of Space 1999. Oh, there's many people that have tried. I know, because I was involved with a few people who tried. There is a documentary called The Eagle Has Landed that I'm peripherally involved with, that you will see about the Kickstarter campaign that's all about the Eagle Transporter from Space 1999. You will see that soon on this channel. Dan Candy says, Rob, your prediction on how Strange New Worlds will reimagine the Mugatu. The Mugatu was the white ape in the Star Trek episode of Private Little War that they had so much fun with on Lower Decks. It was a man in a suit with a unicorn, like a thing. But what they're going to do, and if they do bring the Mugatu back, it's going to be because they go to the planet from a Private Little War, and you're going to meet Tyree and the Hill people, and you're going to meet the villagers, and that's how they'll do it. And they'll bring it back, and they'll probably make it more scary, or actually use CG to make it look like less of an ape and a giant white furry creature. And I will hate it, whatever it is, I can tell you that. I'll give it a chance. Scott Bartholomew asks about waiting for 10 and 20. That's coming shortly. Stay tuned. Those are my lists of 10 things presented in 20-minute reviews of all. So you get my 10 lists of this in 20 minutes. That's coming. Tom Jr. Jackson says, I had to boot someone from this chat, and they went and just accused me of being a white supremacist on Twitter. You should call yourself a right supremacist, meaning WRITE, that you like to read great stories. You believe in great writing, and you believe in the supremacy of great writing. Tell him he's actually wrong. He missed your point. So you're not a white supremacist. You're a right supremacist. Fuck that guy or that person. That's. I'm also, though, when people say that, I tell people I'm a rainbow supremacist. I believe in all ethnicities. There's one race of people on this planet, and that's the human race, and that's it. Mm-hmm. So you can't be a white supremacist because there's only one race of people. You're a human supremacist. That's what I am. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean I don't love whales and dogs and cats. I just want to be clear. I'm sorry that happened to you, Tom. A white supremacist, because somebody booted, like you booted somebody out of Midnight Musings, and you get to be accused of being a white supremacist.
It's insane.
It's crazy.
What?
It's insane, bro.
Chemist says, "This is what I come here for. Let's go." Well, Chemist, thank you for that. Yeah. Irene Jobson. Oh, are you going to say something dirty, Irene? Irene says, "My random love for R&B and Lael. Thanks for midnight entertainment." By the way, Irene Jobson, I follow her now on Instagram. She's really cute. Just saying. Bert says, "I think my milestone chat with James Gunn was skipped." Your milestone chat with James Gunn. I don't know. Let me see. Was it? I don't know. I just see Bert. I'm looking. I don't see what you said. Hang on. I'm going back to look to make sure I didn't miss it. Yeah, I don't see it. I don't see it here. I'm looking at all the super chats. Could you just put your name down and not add anything to it? I don't see. I just see that one chat from you. And I went back and looked at everybody. Scott Bartholomew says, "Where's Bill Hunt?" On his channel. He's on, he's doing his website, Digital Bits. Scott Bartholomew says that Dave Cullen has a good essay on women playing strong female leads. Yeah, I mean, what's so interesting about that is we have so many great examples of strong female characters in movies and TV. And I'm a fan. I mean, everything from Ripley in Aliens to La Femme Nikita, the French film that Luc Besson directed. I mean, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I mean, you name it. I don't like anything else. People will watch and like things that are well written and well done. I really don't think that anybody has a problem at all with a strong. I was watching Charlize Theron in Atomic Blonde the other day. Mm-hmm. I never thought to myself, well, I wonder if I should like this movie because she's a strong female lead. No, it was kick-ass. Just like she was kick-ass in Fury Road. Yeah. Nobody cares. Write something good, and it's when you make the strong female lead unbelievable. Mm-hmm. That's the problem. But that's also true of a male lead as well. If you don't believe the character, and you don't believe the story, that's the problem. And the thing is, what I find so interesting is, watching Buffy or watching Ripley, they don't act like dudes. They're clearly women, and they're acting like a woman would. And it's really interesting. Like women, I can say this from my vast experience with women in my life, women are more pragmatic than men. And if you look at her character in Alien, when they're bringing back Kane, who's been affected by an alien creature, they don't know what's going on. It is Ripley who says, listen, we can't bring him on the ship. We have quarantine. We have protocols. You can't do this because then maybe everyone else will be infected. And it's the dudes that are like, oh, come on. Dallas is like, oh, come on. And then, of course, we don't know Ash is a goddamn robot. But she's the one going, these protocols are in place for a reason. And it's the guys that say, no, whatever. Just let's get him to the sick bay. Well, that was a bad move. And if you'd listened to the pragmatism of Warrant Officer Ripley, you wouldn't have your crew dead. And so what's really interesting is you incorporate female traits into their characters and use them as strengths. And they come off as being strong female characters. But if you just turn your female characters into men, then it becomes inauthentic and you don't believe it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I don't like. And also it shows that somebody can't write a strong female character. Mm-hmm. And the people that, it was dudes that wrote Ripley. And they wrote her because they were good writers. And they understood how to do that. And that's the secret. The secret is
without any type of intent. It was out without intent. There were no type of. They wrote it from a point of just strength and wanting to see a character. They didn't write it from any type of agenda at that point.
No,
at all.
No, and they're thinking, okay, if a woman was a warrant officer on this ship, basically the second in command, how would she behave? And then you have to ask yourself, okay, now that we've talked about her as her gender, now how would a warrant officer behave? And that's one of the things I can't stand about modern writing for both men and women. So much of it is unbelievable. It's all tropes. Tropes. Star Trek Strange New Worlds is one trope after another. The way characters, I don't believe one character on that show. Nobody acts like a real person on that show. Chemist says, "I've been here all along, Doctor." Indeed. A Norwegian Kryptonian said, "Yesterday I watched Mahler's 6-hour review of Ant-Man 3 and it was far better than the movie." I just kept thinking how long it took him to edit that. My God, there's a lot of work that went in there. What is your opinion? Oh, here's Bert. Maybe this is what you were saying, Bert. What is your opinion or insight into an X or a tweet from James Gunn about Wonder Woman, history pushing the comic book up? Wait, about Wonder Woman Historia pushing the comic up the charts. I mean, maybe that's what they're basing their idea of what Wonder Woman is going to be. I don't know anything about that. I haven't looked about that.
Yeah.
I don't know. But that's interesting. Now I want to know. Hunter Becknell says, "Hip hop hooray."
Oh, hey.
Yes.
Hell yeah, brother.
And then Norwegian Kryptonian says, director Nia DaCosta of the Marvels says the movie is more wacky and silly than other Marvel movies, and that makes me worried.
I heard that.
Does it have to be that?
See what I mean, man? Shit.
Everybody wants a comedian.
I swear to God, man. Like, why? Like, and the thing is, damn.
I know. And I'm just like, and who thought that was, I mean, Captain Marvel, the first movie wasn't wacky and silly. And who wants wacky and silly? Anyway, now our final Chemist says, all hail the long man and his ability to break down a movie frame by frame. Let's celebrate well-written characters above and beyond cinema critique. It's a great way to end. I think we all want that.
Yeah.
Scott Bartholomew goes on to say, looking forward to The Creator. I can't wait to see The Creator next month. Gareth Edwards' new movie, who directed Rogue One and Monsters and Godzilla.
Yeah,
I hope it's great.
I definitely can't wait to see it. Yeah.
Well, kids, as we end this show, Lael, what do you got cooking? People can find you on the 1/6 Scale Man channel.
1/6 Scale Man channel, please. I am on my way to 4,000 subscribers. I think I'm at 3,750. I don't know, something. I think it's at 59, almost, whatever. All I'm saying is, if you haven't already subscribed to the 1/6 Scale Man YouTube channel, please do. If you can get me to 4,000 subscribers, I would definitely appreciate it. A modest 4,000. That's all I'm trying to get to. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, make sure you do. Tomorrow is Collectors Lounge International around 12 o'clock. We're going to recap last week's happening. Comic Book Talk with Friends on Monday. Say What Wednesday. Uncivilized Scoundrels on Thursday, where we will basically be doing a critique on Ahsoka, first 2 episodes. Figure Flex Friday, and again, back for Midnight Musing next week. So definitely, please, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure you do. And thank you for your support.
And what do you have cooking on this channel and your channel? And
Yeah, I have on my channel, Positive Fandom, I have my Sunday brunch show. I do have another historical film that I'm going to be reviewing. I think it's called Ravik. I hope I said that right, Darth Vader. If I didn't, I'm sorry. Ladies of the PGS here on the Burnettwork on Monday. Also have I think I have another watch party coming up as well, and I'm going to be picking a new game to play for September. Um, and please like and subscribe to Positive Fandom. And thank you everybody in the chat for your kind words. Thank you both for a great show tonight. Tonight was fantastic.
Norwegian Kryptonian says, and can we please get a Scandinavian to direct Thor 5 so we can get this character for once? Well, listen, maybe. I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing like the guy who directed The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, the Swedish version.
Yes, I like the Swedish version.
Me too. I want to say Yeah, Noomi Rapace. I love her. I want to thank you both for another great show, and I love seeing you guys and everything you guys do. I want to thank Tom Jr. Jackson for being called a white supremacist on Twitter. Thanks for taking a bullet for all of us.
Yeah.
I'm sorry you have to deal with the douchebaggery. I love the fact that people just go off and throw those kinds of terms around. You know, like as if willy-nilly, as if they don't have any responsibility. There's a reason why Tom's a tolerant guy. But I'm sorry that happened to you, Tom.
It's called a temper tantrum.
Yeah, it's a temper tantrum, and but Tom is not that. I'll go defend you on Twitter right now before I go to bed. Mm-hmm. And so thank you, Tom, for being a great moderator, and you are. And I want to thank everybody for generously supporting the channel via Super Chats, tips, and memberships. We're going to have a member call next weekend. Those member calls are always fun, and it's great to put names to faces. I wish we have a lot of members, and a lot of members never go to those calls. And it bums me out because our member calls are really fun.
They are.
And I'd love to, it's you can come to a member call 99 cents a month. And they're really fun, and there's a lot of people that are great members and support the channel, but they never come to the calls, and I always feel like, oh, I'd love to meet you guys. What do you have to say? And we all the member calls where we all kind of know each other.
Yes,
so,
it is true.
You know, we all know each other. So I want to thank you all, both of you. I will let you go now. Go to bed. Give your mom a hug for me. And I hope all is well. Lael, give LaToya a kiss from me, but only on the cheek. You know, tell her it's from me. Respectfully. Respectfully. Okay. All right, kids. I will see you later.
Peace out. Talk to you guys later.
Another great show with my two co-hosts. I can't. I'm not going to bring on any randos tonight. I know people keep asking me. For those of you who are new to the show, there are a lot of the time when I'll bring on random people. It's been pretty fun because I expanded this software's ability to take on randos. And the last time I did it, I call you all. You're all randos to me. I say randos. I don't mean anything disrespectful. It's just I don't know who's going to come on. People are randomly going to come on. I give them a link, and I can get up to 8 of you randomly on the show. But I haven't been able to. I need to prep for it. I need to have this room prepped. I gotta, so I apologize. But on that note, remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. And join Dieter and I tomorrow at 11 a.m. Or today at 11 a.m. Yeah, 11 a.m. I haven't bought anything this week, so I'm sorry. Next week, yes, but this week, no. But Dieter, I'm sure, has bought something you'll all marvel and go, why did you buy that? Because I do that. But anyway, so check that out. Come visit us tomorrow. Another episode of Architects of Imagination drop tomorrow. And I'll probably do a Robservations too. So, yeah. So I would guess, hey, if you're in the LA area, Southern California, we'll see if this hurricane hits, what happens. Stay safe, be good. And we'll all have something to talk about tomorrow. And on that note, have a better night.